Over 3 hours of One Piece theories. If you clicked on this video, it's obviously because you love One Piece, but also because you're looking for a long video to play in the background while you do other stuff. Well, this is the perfect video for that. Throughout the video, we'll dive into all kinds of theories, the final war, the Straw Hats themselves, and many other topics. Just a heads up, making this kind of video takes a ton of work, so if you enjoy it, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe to help me reach 5,000 subscribers and make my dream come true. Also, let me know in the comments what you're doing while this video plays in the background. Alright, I'll shut up now. Let's get into over 3 hours of One Piece theories. 3 best theories for each of the Straw Hat members, explained and analyzed. 1. The lies that became truth, and Usopp's possible death. One of the oldest and most popular theories in the One Piece fandom is the idea that Usopp might actually die by the end of the story, and not just any death, but one that mirrors something he said countless times, that he wants to die as a brave warrior of the sea. Now, that may sound simple on the surface, but when you dig into the pattern Oda has built around Usopp, it gets a lot deeper. Usopp has this running gag in the series. He lies a lot. From the very beginning, he's been telling outrageous stories, like having fought a giant goldfish whose poop is the size of an island, or battling massive moles. The wild part? Almost every one of these lies has come true in some form. That mole fight happened in Alabasta with Miss Merry Christmas. The tribe of tiny people, the Tontada in Dressrosa. That goldfish, after Little Garden, we got that too. At first glance, it might just seem like a funny gimmick, Oda giving Usopp this Pinocchio-turned-prophet vibe, but the consistency is so on point that it feels more like a narrative device than a coincidence. And that brings us back to the line, "I want to die as a brave warrior of the sea." He says it more than once. It's not just a wish, it's practically a declaration. And if his other lies are turning into truths, then what about this one? This theory really gains weight when you think about how much Oda loves foreshadowing. He set up big plot points years in advance. The idea that he planted Usopp's future death back in East Blue isn't far-fetched at all. In fact, if you assume Oda had the broad strokes of the ending in mind, even when One Piece was supposed to be a 5-year series, LOL, then Usopp's final fate could have been planned since day one. Usopp dying doesn't just fit with his personal narrative, it would also complete his arc perfectly. He started off as a coward, a liar, a kid playing pirate, but over the years, he's grown. He still lies, but he's also fought against giants, taken down strong enemies, and even awakened Observation Haki. He's earned respect. He's becoming the brave warrior he always dreamed of. So what better end than going out in a blaze of glory, protecting his crew or helping someone else, finally becoming what he always wanted to be, not just a liar, but a legend. That said, it doesn't have to be permanent death. Maybe he dies and is presumed dead, becoming a folklore hero, or maybe he dies and is remembered like a mythical figure. Either way, it's poetic. His lies weren't just fantasy, they were a prophecy, and the last one about dying heroically might just be the most important too. Usopp is related to Mont Blanc Noland, or carries his will. This one's a bit more obscure, but super interesting. The idea that Usopp could be related to Mont Blanc Noland, or at least carry his inherited will. Let's break this down. Noland was a famous explorer and warrior, and above all, someone who was labeled a liar by history. The story goes that he discovered a city of gold, but when he brought others to find it, it was gone. He was executed for being a fraud. Sound familiar? It should, because Usopp is also seen as a liar, and yet time and time again, the things he says somehow come true. In Skypiea, there's even a moment where Usopp connects with Noland's story. He reads about him, he's curious about him, and the parallels start to stack up. Even Luffy casually jokes, "Hey, that's just like Usopp." And later in Dressrosa, we find out that the Tontada know about Noland and even revere him. Guess what? The Tontada end up revering Usopp too, calling him God Usopp and praising him like a savior. It doesn't end there. Both men have deep ties to themes of truth, lies, and legacy. Both are mocked or misunderstood, but they still fight for others. Both play the role of unlikely heroes who leave big impacts wherever they go. So whether it's by blood or just through a shared destiny, this theory suggests that Usopp Usopp is Noland's spiritual successor. We don't know much about either of their family trees, but that doesn't really matter in One Piece. Inherited will is often stronger than blood. Roger and Luffy aren't related, yet they share the same drive and D in their names. So Usopp being connected to Noland doesn't need DNA to be meaningful. And there's a bonus. The current arc, Elbaf, could tie this theory together. Noland was an adventurer. It wouldn't be weird if he had been to Elbaf. If Usopp finds traces of Noland there, or even learns something new about his own lineage, this theory could gain massive credibility. And narratively, it's clean. It gives Usopp a deeper purpose beyond just being the crew's sniper. It ties his obsession with lies and legends into the world's larger history. 3. Usopp will forge a legendary weapon, maybe for Luffy. Let's switch gears from destiny and death to something a little more hands-on. Usopp might not be an inventor on Franky's level, but he's got some serious crafting skills. He built his own slingshot, Pop Green Arsenal, upgraded Nami's claim attack, and constantly modifies his gear. He's basically the crew's low-key weaponsmith. So here's the theory. Usopp will one day create a legendary weapon, either for himself or for someone else on the crew, possibly Luffy. Think about it. In Wano, we saw how powerful weapons like Enma can shape destinies. Legendary swords aren't just cool, they're symbolic. What if Usopp's contribution to the final war is building something iconic? It fits perfectly into his arc. He started with toys and tricks, then moved into serious battle gear. What's the next step? Something that rivals ancient weapons, not necessarily in destruction, but in legend. It could be a slingshot with insane power, or maybe he goes full out and builds Luffy a weapon that enhances his Nika abilities. A symbolic sword or shield, something that aligns with the sun god mythos. Here's the kicker. If Usopp does die heroically, see theory number 1, the weapon he leaves behind becomes part of his legacy. People don't just remember the warrior, they remember the weapon. That's how legends are made in One Piece. And hey, it's also a subtle flex on Oda's part. Instead of having the shipwright, Franky, or the genius, Vegapunk, make the ultimate gear, the liar who no one took seriously ends up crafting a tool that helps win the final war. That kind of twist is exactly Oda's style. Usopp's been improving weapons since day one. This theory just takes it to the next logical level, whether it's creating something for himself to go out in a blaze of glory or giving Luffy a final gift to carry into the last battle. It would be the ultimate payoff for his entire journey. 1. Brook's second awakening, the true power of the Yomi Yomi no Mi. Alright, first up is a banger of a theory, that Brook might not be done evolving. We already know he's got the Yomi Yomi no Mi, the revive fruit, which basically brought him back to life after death, letting his soul return to his body. Even if the body was a skeleton by then. But what if that wasn't even the fruit's final form? What if there's a second awakening of this power that we've only started to see? Now, this idea isn't just pulled out of nowhere. Remember Whole Cake Island? Brook showed off some freaky stuff. Dude literally left his body and had his soul flying around like a spooky ghost version of himself. Full-on stand mode. If you're into JoJo references, that power alone was sick, and it kind of hinted that he's more than just a sword-swinging skeleton with musical vibes. That could have been his first awakening, with a beginning of mastering the fruit beyond the basic revive trick. So the theory goes, what if Brook can push this even further? Like, to the point of manipulating souls in the outside world, not just his own. We're talking full-blown necromancer Brook, summoning spirits, talking to the dead, maybe even traveling to the realm of the dead itself. And here's where things get really interesting. Brook himself mentioned something called the Yomi, a kind of underworld where his soul wandered before finding his body again. That ain't just poetic storytelling. He described it like a real place, a tangible, otherworldly dimension. So what if Oda's playing the long game, and that underworld becomes a crucial location later in the story? Maybe Brook, through an advanced awakening, can go there voluntarily. Could you imagine that? Brook being the only Straw Hat able to freely cross into the land of the dead. That's some game-changing power. This could tie into bigger lore, like maybe the final war has a spiritual dimension, maybe there's a reason Joy Boys will keeps reincarnating, maybe there's some dead characters whose guidance is needed to defeat the final villain. And Brook becomes the bridge between the living and the dead. Picture it, Brook closing his eye sockets, concentrating, and boom, he slips into the underworld to have a conversation with Roger, or Odin, or even someone like Joy Boy's soul, if that's a thing. Like, damn. And let's not forget, in One Piece, alternate dimensions aren't unheard of. Blueno's Door fruit opened doors to a pocket dimension. Brûlée had her mirror world. This isn't Naruto-style chakra planes. One Piece canon has alternate realms, so a realm of the dead, totally plausible. This second awakening theory basically turns Brook into one of the most important Straw Hats in the endgame. Imagine if a whole side quest involves going into the underworld to get a secret about the One Piece, and Brook is the only one who can lead the crew there. That would give the skeleton the kind of spotlight he honestly deserves. He's been comic relief, emotional support, and musical king, but this theory turns him into a key player in the end of the world. 2. Brook using music to talk to or temporarily revive the dead. Now this one's juicy and just a little insane in the best way, so check this. What if Brook could use his music, yeah, his actual soul-powered jam sessions, to temporarily bring the dead back to life? Not in a full-on zombie army kind of way, but like short, poetic, meaningful resurrections. Let me set the stage. Brook is the Soul King. That's not just a band name. It's low-key prophetic. He's a literal skeleton powered by his soul, using music that literally touches the souls of people around him. We've seen him calm folks, confuse enemies, boost morale, all with a guitar solo. So the theory goes, what if he takes it even further and uses that music to resonate with the souls of the dead? Imagine there's a major arc and someone important dies, maybe an ally with key info, or someone the crew had bonded with. Normally, that'd be it. Rest in peace. But Brook, feeling the pain and desperation, picks up his guitar, strums a haunting tune, and suddenly, the soul of that person flickers into the scene for 10 minutes, maybe even 1 hour, just enough to talk, say goodbye, share a last message, drop vital lore, then they fade back into the afterlife. It's not resurrection in the traditional sense, not some full-blooded return to life. It's soul projection, spiritual echo, music-powered ghost chat, and because it's temporary, it doesn't mess with the finality of death that Oda usually respects. What's wild is this isn't even that far from what Brook already does. His soul detaches from his body, his voice reaches into people's hearts. He's literally called the Soul King, and his whole shtick is that he understands souls. So if anyone in the world of One Piece could summon a soul for a limited encore, it's our Bony Bard. This theory would also tie Brook into so many potential scenes. He could give closure to side characters. He could bring back lost legends for a last few words. Maybe even bring back Ace for a quick Luffy hug and, "I'm proud of you, little bro." You know Oda would absolutely ruin us with that scene emotionally. Plus, if this was tied to time, like only within 24 hours of death, it'd create amazing tension. We need to talk to so-and-so, but they died 12 hours ago. Brook, we've got one shot. Cue desperate music and an epic ghost concert. All this also justifies Brook's musician identity being more than comic flavor. If his music literally bends the veil between life and death, it makes his art power, not in a fighting stronger sense, but in a narrative sense. He'd be a bard in the truest mythical sense, a wielder of ancient spiritual power through music. Honestly, this might be one of the coolest power-ups One Piece could ever give to a non-fighter character. A little grim, sure, but poetic, so One Piece. 3. Brook becomes the guardian of the Straw Hats' legacy. Okay, now this last one. This one's gonna punch you in the feelings, because it's not about flashy powers or wild reveals, it's about legacy. The theory? Brook survives everyone, and becomes the storyteller, the protector of the Straw Hats' memory. Let's be real, Brook's already over 90 years old. He's a skeleton. The man literally doesn't age anymore. Unless his bones start crumbling, he's functionally immortal. So flash forward 100 years. The Straw Hats are legends. Luffy, Zoro, Nami, Sanji, all gone. Their tale is told in whispers and songs. But who's there, walking the earth, still jamming on his guitar? Brook. The theory says Brook becomes like a traveling bard or myth keeper. He wanders the world, telling stories through his music. He sings about the adventures of his Nakama. Maybe there's a song for each of them. Sanji's fire, Nami's storms, Usopp's bravery. He keeps the dream alive, especially for people in places that never met the Straw Hats personally. Picture this. A village kid hears a song from a traveling skeleton about the pirate king, Luffy, about how he united the seas, broke the chains of oppression, laughed at the end of the world, and the kid asks, was he real? And Brook just smiles and plays another song. Not only is this poetic as hell, it makes perfect sense narratively. Brook has always been the echo of an earlier era. He waited decades for Laboon. He's been through loss and loneliness, and now he'd use that eternal lifespan to remember, to make sure their story never dies. This also brings closure to Brook's arc. He started off with death, loss, isolation. He ends as the soul of the world, literally and metaphorically. It's a little sad, yeah, the idea of him standing by their graves, still strumming, but it's also beautiful, because it means the dream lives on, the laughter echoes. He'd be the guardian of their legend, the bard of the Pirate King's crew, still rocking, still telling their tale. Theory 1. Sanji will create a new style of cooking, alright? So this theory is less about punching bad guys and more about pans and passion. The idea is that Sanji, beyond being one of Luffy's wings and a powerhouse in the crew, could go on to revolutionize the culinary world of One Piece. Not by just cooking better food, but by inventing an entirely new style of cooking, his own signature culinary philosophy. This makes a lot of sense when you think about who Sanji really is. He's not just some guy who cooks for the crew. His identity, his values, his dreams, they all revolve around food. He left everything behind to follow Zeph's ideals, respects food so deeply he'd rather starve than waste it, and he constantly uses cooking as a way to care for others. So what's next for a chef like that? You guessed it, innovation. Sanji has traveled to so many islands and cultures across the Grand Line. He studied cooking styles from all over the world. He learned recipes from Kamabaka, has experience with Sky Island ingredients, Fishman Island dishes, even ancient stuff in Wano. So the theory goes, what if he takes all that knowledge and fuses it into one cohesive culinary philosophy? Not only that, but maybe he cooks differently. We're talking flashy and unique, a mix of martial arts and culinary mastery. Imagine Sanji using his kicks to dice ingredients mid-air or searing meat with Diable Jam. Wild? Yeah, but this is One Piece, and it fits his vibe perfectly. His whole fighting style is kick-based, so why not carry that over to his food prep too? Beyond technique, the style could be something more meaningful, like infusing meals with emotion or spiritual energy. Remember how Sanji made food that physically boosted the Straw Hat's recovery? Maybe his future recipes can blend nutrition, flavor, and strength boosts, becoming a sought-after secret in the culinary world. And if this becomes a movement, imagine chefs around the world following the blackleg style of cooking. Sanji becoming a symbol of revolutionary cuisine, his methods taught in schools across the seas. He'd be the Pirate King of cooking, carrying Zeph's dream of the all blue into every kitchen that follows in his footsteps. This theory is not about flashy battles or political stakes, but it's deeply personal and arguably just as meaningful. It's about growth, legacy, and passion, and it's one of the most fitting futures for a character like Sanji. Theory 2. Sanji will become King of Germa. Now this one's a bit controversial. The idea here is that despite everything Sanji went through with the Vinsmokes, abuse, trauma, rejection, he'll eventually reconcile with them and take over the Germa 66 Kingdom. At first glance, this feels super weird. Sanji hates Germa. He rejected their ideology, refused to wear the raid suit until he had to, and distanced himself from their scientific, heartless culture. So the idea of him becoming king feels off. But let's dig deeper. Germa is still around, still powerful, and still ruled by Sanji's terrible father. But maybe the Vinsmokes start to see the error of their ways, perhaps influenced by how Sanji defied them and still became strong and noble. Maybe they soften, maybe not, but the point is, they come to realize that Sanji is the only one fit to lead them into a better future. Imagine this, Germa is struggling and Sanji steps in, not for them, but for the people under their rule. He takes the throne and turns the whole kingdom upside down. No more heartless cloning, no more cold-blooded militarism. Under Sanji, Germa becomes a kingdom of compassion and innovation, maybe even focused on healing and food instead of war. And here's where it gets juicy. What if Sanji rebrands Germa as a kingdom based around cuisine? Picture a floating nation of gourmet chefs and restaurants, supported by the best tech Germa has to offer. They sail the seas, helping starving islands, building food networks, and spreading joy through flavor. Sounds crazy? Sure, but it's very Sanji. Now take it even further. What if Germa's new HQ is built above the All Blue? That mythical sea with fish from every ocean. If it exists, this, it would be the perfect place for Sanji to build a culinary empire. The Vinsmoke legacy becomes something new, something redemptive. In the end, Sanji wouldn't be Mr. Prince. He'd be Mr. King, but not the cold king of his father's dreams, a ruler of flavor, freedom, and compassion. It's a long shot, but one hell of a satisfying redemption arc for both Sanji and his cursed bloodline. Theory 3, Sanji will fully inherit Zeph's will. Now this one's got that classic One Piece flavor, legacy. The theory says that Sanji won't just follow in Zeph's footsteps. He'll take on his entire will, completely inheriting everything Zeph stood for. Think about it, Zeph wasn't just Sanji's mentor, he was his father in every way that counts. He taught him to cook, to fight, to be a man of principles, and most of all, he passed on the dream of the All Blue. Sanji already carries that dream, but this theory says it won't stop there. One day, Sanji will run Baratie, not as some nostalgic callback, but as the new symbol of pirate chef culture. Maybe Zeph retires, or maybe he passes away, but Sanji takes over, not just the restaurant, but the spirit behind it. He turns Baratie into a global chain, or maybe he runs a new version of it aboard a flagship that sails the world. Either way, it becomes a place where anyone from any background can eat, laugh, and live, like Zeph always intended. And maybe, just maybe, Sanji hires other young chefs with troubled pasts, paying it forward the same way Zeph once saved him. Even the parallel is clean. Zeph lost a leg for Sanji. Sanji uses that same leg to rise to the top. Zeph was a pirate and a cook. Sanji becomes a pirate king's right hand and the world's best chef. Zeph taught Sanji to fight with his feet. Sanji perfects that art and teaches others. This isn't just inheritance, it's evolution. Sanji wouldn't just carry Zeph's will, he'd surpass it. He'd honor his old man by becoming even better than he ever dreamed. And that honestly might be the most One Piece kind of ending Sanji could have. Theory 1. Chopper will cure all diseases, even the one that killed Roger. Let's start with the most iconic Chopper theory, the one literally everyone has thought about at least once. Chopper will find a cure for every disease in the world. Yeah, that's the big one. It's not just a theory, really. It feels more like a slow-burning prophecy built into the story from the moment Chopper was introduced. So where does this come from? It all starts with his backstory. Dr. Hiriluk, the guy who changed Chopper's life, had one huge belief: there's no disease that can't be cured. That statement stuck with Chopper, and ever since, it's been his lifelong goal to make it a reality. But here's where it gets juicy. This dream isn't just wishful thinking or a kid's fantasy. In One Piece, dreams have weight. They drive arcs, shape characters, and often define legacies. For Chopper, this dream is his version of the Pirate King goal. And if Luffy's chasing a legend, why wouldn't Chopper? Now let's tie this into the broader story. Gol D. Roger, the Pirate King, died of an incurable illness. That's canon. The guy who changed the world couldn't be saved, even by the best doctors. And that's where this theory levels up. The idea is that Luffy might get the same disease. It wouldn't just be tragic, it would be poetic. Luffy walking the path of Roger only to reach the same roadblock. Except this time, there's Chopper. So imagine this scenario. Luffy gets sick. It's serious. It's deadly. And no one can stop it. But Chopper, now a world-class doctor, finds a way. He does what no one could do for Roger. He cures the incurable. That's the ultimate proof he fulfilled his dream. Not only does he save his captain, but he also redefines what's possible in medicine. And in doing so, he literally saves the future of the world. This theory also works even if Luffy doesn't get sick. Maybe Chopper just keeps studying. Maybe we get a post-time skip future, like a 10 to 20 year time jump, and we see him running a clinic, curing the rarest of rare diseases. Either way, he becomes a medical legend, someone people whisper about in the same way they talk about Joy Boy or the Pirate King. But instead of treasure or warfare, his legacy is healing. And it's not just a narrative full circle, it's character fulfillment. Chopper, the little reindeer who was once rejected, feared, and misunderstood, becomes the world's greatest healer. It's peak One Piece character payoff. Theory 2, Chopper will be the key to finding the One Piece. Thanks to his animal talk ability, this one, super underrated and surprisingly logical. Chopper might be the one to help find the One Piece using his ability to talk to animals. Let's break it down. Chopper is a reindeer who ate the human fruit. So yeah, he walks, talks, and acts like a human, but biologically, he's still part animal, and that's key. Throughout the story, we've seen that he can understand and communicate with animals in a way no other Straw Hat can. He acts like a translator for creatures that would otherwise be silent back background details. Now here's where the theory kicks in. What if when they reach the final island, Raftel or Laugh-Tale, the One Piece isn't just sitting out in the open? What if it's hidden? Maybe it's in a cave. Maybe there's some kind of natural protection, and the only ones who know where it is are the island's animals. Yup, not a log pose, not some epic battle, just a bunch of local creatures who've been chilling on that island for centuries and know what's up. And suddenly, Chopper's skill becomes critical. While everyone else is looking for clues, he just talks to a monkey or something and gets the real tea. Yeah, bro, that treasure, it's under that big waterfall. We see weird people go there every few decades. Boom, problem solved. And it's even deeper than that. What if the One Piece is not just treasure, but something symbolic or emotional? Maybe it's connected to Joy Boy, to ancient creatures, or to something the animals on the island protect. Chopper, with his empathy and communication skills, could connect with them and unlock secrets no one else could. It'd be a great twist too. People expect Robin or Luffy to be the key to everything, but Chopper, no one would see that coming. It would give him a major role in the climax and justify his place in the crew beyond being the cute mascot. Also, it reinforces a major One Piece theme. Everyone matters. Every straw hat has a purpose, even if it's not flashy. Chopper's been sidelined a bit in combat lately, but this would be a way for Oda to make his unique gift essential to the story's finale. Theory 3. Chopper will create a mobile hospital to help the world. This one is a personal favorite. Chopper might build and operate a mobile hospital ship after One Piece ends. Let that idea sink in for a second. Instead of settling down in a fancy city or living on an island, Chopper continues traveling, but not with pirates. This time he travels as a doctor for the people. His ship is fully equipped. Treatment rooms, lab stations, a surgical area, even beds for long-term patients. Think of it like Bharati, but for medicine instead of food. And the best part? The ship moves. It sails from island to island, offering medical care to people who have no hospitals. That's huge in a world made of islands where travel is tough and many communities are isolated. We've already seen how hard it is for people to find good medical treatment in One Piece. From Nami's sickness in Little Garden to Roger's incurable disease, access to care is a real problem. This ship, it solves that. Maybe it's even a fleet, one in each blue. And Chopper, being the legend he is, trains doctors on each one. You could even imagine a Denden Mushi hotline. Someone calls, says their village is in trouble, and the Chopper ship sets sail to help. It's like the Marineford Buster call, but for healing, not destruction. This also connects to Chopper's dream. Healing every disease doesn't just mean discovering cures. It means making those cures accessible. And what better way than bringing the hospital directly to the people? Oda could even show this in a time skip epilogue. Old Chopper, still short and fluffy, running the whole operation, getting hugged by kids on every island, being a symbol of hope. He doesn't need a bounty. His legend is the lives he saved. It's poetic, it's useful, and honestly, it would be the most wholesome legacy in all of One Piece. Theory 1. Nami might be of celestial or divine origin. Let's start with the juiciest one, the idea that Nami might secretly have divine or even celestial dragon lineage. Sounds wild, right? But once you lay out all the breadcrumbs Oda has scattered through the story, it actually starts to feel pretty solid. First, let's talk about how Nami was introduced. She wasn't born in Kokoyashi village like Nojiko. She was found as a baby during a storm, lying in the middle of chaos, and rescued by Bellemere. That's already suspicious. This isn't some orphan adoption cliche. Nami's origin feels deliberately mysterious. Oda didn't need to make it a stormy rescue scene. He chose that. And in One Piece, that kind of detail always comes back later. Now, consider Nami's obsession with money and wealth. While at first it was a survival trait, she needed to buy back her village from Arlong, her love of treasure has stuck around long after she had any need for it. She's not greedy in a selfish way, but her instincts for treasure and economics are practically supernatural. Combine that with her natural elegance, tactical intelligence, and charm, and you've got a character who stands out even beyond her beauty. She often acts like royalty, bossing the boys around, negotiating deals, commanding respect. There's also her ridiculous talent with weather, not just the climate act. Even before she got that tool, she could predict storms and read wind patterns like no one else. Remember in Drum Island when she was sick in bed and still predicted a storm coming? That's not just skill, that's something deeper. It's almost like she's connected to the weather. So what's the theory then? That that Nami comes from a bloodline tied to the heavens. Whether it's celestial dragons or something even older, maybe a race of skyfolk with natural weather-related abilities, like the Birkin or Skypieans, or even a royal family destroyed in war. It would explain everything. Her weather intuition, her strange origins, her magnetic pull toward wealth, her deep bond with Zeus, her role as the weather witch of the Straw Hats. And here's the kicker. This could be a plot twist near the end of the series. A final revelation about Nami's parents or heritage could give her an emotional arc similar to Sanji's, except hers would be tied to ancient mysteries or lost nobility. It wouldn't change her personality, but it could give her more weight in the final conflict, especially if her heritage ties to the world government, the ancient weapons, or the Void Century. In a story where identity and legacy matter so much, Nami's hidden past is one of the few remaining mysteries we haven't explored, and the deeper her connection to the world's ancient power structures, the more crucial her role could become in the climax. Theory 2, Nami will be key to reaching Laugh Tale through her mapping abilities. Alright, this one hits harder when you think about what Nami's actual dream is. To draw a map of the entire world, not become Pirate Queen, not find treasure, not fight the world government, just create the ultimate map. Seems simple, right? But here's where the theory goes next level. What if Nami's dream and her cartographic skills are actually essential to finding Laugh Tale? We all know that to reach Laugh Tale, you need the 4 road poneglyphs. Once you have them, you plot the locations and supposedly trace an X to find the final island. That seems easy enough, but the moment you dig into the details, it becomes clear it might not be so simple. Why? Because when the crew first found a road poneglyph, Robin made a curious comment to Nami. She said the glyph wasn't just a location, it resembled a navigation chart. That line might seem minor, but it implies that understanding the final destination isn't just about reading text, it's about interpreting the information as a map. Enter Nami, the best navigator and cartographer in the story. If the road poneglyphs aren't literal GPS coordinates, but instead form a complex, possibly ancient or even mystical chart, then Nami is the only one who could decode it. It wouldn't just be about following the log pose anymore. It would require understanding weather patterns, currents, planetary positions, maybe even celestial navigation, which ties back to the first theory. This makes Nami more than just a support character. It puts her at the heart of the Straw Hats' final journey. Just like how Robin reads the Void Century, Nami could be the one to chart the course to Laugh Tale. And from a narrative standpoint, it's genius. Every Straw Hat plays a role in the final journey. Frankie builds the ship, Jinbei steers it, Robin deciphers the text, Luffy leads, but Nami is the one who actually gets them there, who draws the final line, completes the map, and fulfills her lifelong dream right alongside Luffy's. It turns her cartography into something epic and gives her a legacy far bigger than just being the navigator. Theory 3, Nami will control the weather globally and monetize it. This one's future focused and it slaps. Nami will become the queen of weather manipulation, literally controlling the climate across the world and turn it into a business. We already know that Nami's Climatact, powered by weather balls and now enhanced with Zeus, allows her to manipulate rain, lightning, wind, and even summon massive storms. She's been evolving her weather control abilities for years, and unlike most Devil Fruit powers, hers come from tools and knowledge, meaning they can keep growing indefinitely. So here's the theory. Once the One Piece journey ends, Nami sets up a worldwide weather service. Towns, islands, and entire regions can pay for her to create the weather they need. Crops not growing, she brings rain. Hurricanes on the way, she disperses them. Need sunshine for a festival, boom, clear skies. All custom ordered through Denden Mushi. It sounds insane, but it's actually genius. It fulfills her love for money, it uses her unique talents, and it helps people everywhere. It turns her into a climate wizard and a global celebrity. You could even see this becoming a formal business. Nami's Climacorp, with trained weather techs she oversees. Maybe she works with Vegapunk's old weather tech from Weatheria and builds it into a global network. Maybe she integrates it with sea routes and helps navigators stay safe. She could even work with the New World government post-revolution to prevent famines or natural disasters. This would make Nami the most influential post-crew Straw Hat. Luffy becomes Pirate King. Robin preserves history. Frankie builds the future. But Nami, she controls the skies. And if you're worried about the whole altering weather is dangerous argument, just remember, we're in a world with floating islands, talking whales, and giant elephants carrying entire nations. Realism isn't the point. In One Piece, it's all about dreams, and Nami's dream could literally shape the world's weather, bring peace to storm-ravaged regions, and give her a never-ending supply of treasure in return. Sounds like a win-win. Theory 1. Franky will recreate Pluton or build a new one. Let's start with the most well-known Franky theory. He's gonna rebuild Pluton, the ancient weapon. Not just help someone else do it, not just sketch it up, but fully recreate it himself. Back in Enies lobby, Franky burned the blueprints for Pluton in front of CP9. But here's the twist. A ton of fans, and this theory, believe he memorized them. Franky's a genius craftsman with a brain like a supercomputer when it comes to engineering. There's no way he handled something that dangerous without locking it in his head first. Now, we know the original Pluton is supposedly hidden in Wano, but the theory isn't about digging it up, it's about countering it. If the original Pluton is used by the world government or some other threat, the idea is Franky would build his own Pluton, a counter weapon to stop it, not a copy, not a replica, something completely unique that borrows from the blueprint, but is infused with Franky's own tech and ideals. It wouldn't be the same weapon, it would be better, because Franky wouldn't just recreate something from the Void Century. He'd upgrade it with modern tech, Sunny's design principles, and everything he's learned from Vegapunk's lab on Egghead. And that's where this theory really pops off. Franky has been collecting knowledge for years. He rebuilt his body with Vegapunk's blueprints, built the Thousand Sunny from Atom Wood, and even modified his mecha with insane features. If anyone has the skills to create a modern ancient weapon, it's him. And with the world heading toward all-out war, it makes total sense for him to have a massive role beyond just the shipwright. A custom Pluton could be anything, a mobile warship, a massive mecha, or even an upgraded Sunny. Some fans think the Sunny itself could transform into a Pluton-like machine. Others believe Franky might build a separate craft, kind of like a last resort battleship. Either way, this would make Franky crucial in the final battle. Imagine Luffy taking on Imu or the Gorosei while Franky rolls up in the mech equivalent of Godzilla. Total chaos, total hype, and even narratively it fits. Pluton was once a threat to the world, but Franky could make it a protector of freedom, a weapon not of destruction but of liberation, just like the Straw Hats themselves. Theory 2. Franky will build a robot army for the final war. This one's straight out of a mecha anime fever dream, but it works. The theory says Franky is going to build an army of robots to help in the final war. Sounds wild, but let's break it down. Back in Marineford, the Marines used the Pacifistas, robot soldiers modeled after Kuma. They were terrifying, efficient, and basically turned the tide of war. So the idea here is that Franky takes that concept and flips it. A Straw Hat version of Pacifistas, cyborgs built for freedom. Now think about what we've seen from Franky so far. He's built the Franky Shogun, his giant mech, the Thousand Sunny, a ship with weapons hidden all over it, upgraded arms, lasers, and gear using Vegapunk's designs. The guy is basically a one-man robotics lab. He even uses cola as fuel. How is this man not the most anime thing in the story already? So this theory goes, in the lead up to the final war, likely against the world government, Franky builds a fleet of robot warriors, not thousands, just enough to make a dent. 20 to 30 battle-ready, Sunny-styled mechs with individual functions. Tank type, air type, stealth type, etc. Some might be piloted by allies, like Usopp, Chopper, maybe even Vivi, while others are AI controlled. Could even be remote controlled by Franky from the Sunny like a commander. And here's the best part, he might not do it alone. Vegapunk is now involved in the story, and he's shown interest in rebellion. If he and Franky team up, that's a dream team of tech. Between Franky's creativity and Vegapunk's insane science, a robot army isn't just possible, it's practically guaranteed. Plus, the world is gonna need help. We're talking about a battle against the Celestial Dragons, the Admirals, the Gorosei, maybe even Imu. If Luffy and his core crew are fighting on the front lines, the background forces, Wano warriors, revolutionaries, old allies, will need support. Enter Franky's robot army. They provide backup, defend civilians, stall fleets. It's not about overpowering the Marines. It's about evening the odds in a chaotic battlefield. This would give Franky a legendary legacy. He wouldn't just be the guy who built the ship, he'd be the one who built the resistance. Theory 3. Franky will unlock his final form, Ultimate Mecha Evolution. This is the most hype theory, and honestly, the one that needs to happen. The theory says that Franky will unlock a final transformation, a fully upgraded version of himself, beyond the Franky Shogun, beyond the post-time skip body, beyond anything we've seen so far. Here's the idea. Throughout the story, everyone in the Straw Hats has leveled up visually. Luffy got Gear 5, Zoro unlocked Advanced Swordsmanship, Sanji has his Germa enhancements, Robin has her demon form, even Nami got Zeus, but Franky, he's kind of been the same since Fishman Island. Yeah, he added new weapons and tech, but he hasn't had that huge glow-up moment. This theory says that's intentional. Oda's saving it. The Sunny itself has hidden compartments. We've seen doors that haven't opened, weapons that haven't fired. The idea is that during the final war, Franky merges with part of the Sunny or reveals an attachment module that triggers his final form. Think Megazord meets Gundam, a sleek, high-power Franky mecha hybrid. He wouldn't pilot it like the Franky Shogun. He'd become it, fully integrated with the system, combining engineering and humanity like never before. The transformation could be triggered by emergency protocols, or maybe by connecting to a Vegapunk satellite or something he pre-built during the Egghead arc. The transformation would come with upgraded lasers, flight, shielding, and artillery, possibly even AI enhancements. And narratively, it gives Franky a moment. He's often comic relief, but fans know he deserves more. A final battle form would let him shine in a way we haven't seen since Enies Lobby. Picture him saving the crew with a surprise entrance, blasting through enemies, doing the super pose with war music in the background. Even better, imagine if his final form is powered by the Sunny's core. Like, the ship itself trusts him enough to connect with him. That would make Franky not just the builder of the ship, but part of its soul. Theory 1. Robin will unlock a giant clone army version of herself. Alright, let's start with one of the flashiest Robin theories out there. She'll eventually be able to create full-sized giant clones of herself. Not just hands, not legs, not even the demon-looking form we saw in Wano, but actual full Robin clones that are huge, battle-ready, and possibly numerous. Like an entire army made of Robin. Sounds nuts, right? But the idea has roots in what we've already seen. Back in Enies Lobby, Robin was sprouting dozens of arms and legs. Over time, especially after the time skip, she started combining her sprouts into bigger structures, massive limbs, whole torsos, even a monstrous demon form in Onigashima. So naturally, if she can build parts of herself bigger and bigger, why wouldn't she eventually be able to put all those parts together and make full-body clones of her entire self? And we're not just talking regular size here. The theory suggests giant scale versions. Think about it. Robin creates a 10-meter tall version of herself that can wreck buildings, throw enemies around like toys, or just be a walking wall of destruction. Now imagine her sprouting 2 or 3 of these. Or 10th, an army of Robins all sprouting more limbs from their giant arms. It's chaos. Power-wise, it makes sense. The Hana Hana no Mi, Flower Flower Fruit, has insane scaling potential. It lets her replicate her own body as many times as she wants and place them wherever she wants. With enough stamina and training, she could turn into a one-woman army. And with the Straw Hats heading into what's basically the final war against the world government, it would make sense for Oda to give her one last huge, literally, upgrade. The only question is stamina. The bigger the body, the more energy it would take. But hey, Luffy burns through 3 gears a fight. Zoro nearly dies every other arc. Robin's due for her high-risk, high-reward moment, and this would make her terrifying in combat. Not just a support fighter, but an unstoppable tank. The best part? It ties into her personality too. She's always been calm, calculating, but fiercely protective of her crew. A giant clone army would be a perfect way for her to shield them, literally, with her own body. Multiply. Theory 2. Robin is hiding crucial information from the crew. This one's less about power and more about trust. Robin might be hiding key information from the rest of the crew, on purpose. And yeah, this one hits different. Since the time skip, Robin's had access to a lot of poneglyphs. She's read ones in Zoo, Wano, Fishman Island, and probably some off-screen. And what's weird is, she rarely tells the crew what they say. Like, sure, sometimes she shares little bits. This is a road poneglyph, or this talks about Poseidon. But overall, she keeps quiet, really quiet. This theory suggests she's doing that intentionally, not because she's betraying anyone. Far from it, but because what she's reading is so dangerous, so heavy that sharing it too early could make the crew targets, or even destroy their morale. Think about it, Robin might already know the truth about Joy Boy, or what the One Piece is, or how the final war will unfold, but instead of dumping that info and risking chaos, she's waiting for the right moment, probably during the last big arc, maybe even in the middle of a major battle when Luffy needs a push or someone like Imu is revealed. It's a smart narrative move too. Oda's clearly holding off on major Void Century reveals, and since Robin is the only one who can read the poneglyphs, it makes sense to filter that info through her and make her the gatekeeper of those secrets until it matters most. But it's also a bit tragic. Robin has always been the quiet, observant one, carrying the weight of Ohara's destruction, watching people die for knowledge, and now she's shouldering the biggest truths in the world, totally alone. That gives her a crazy amount of internal depth and makes her role in the final act way more impactful than just the historian. Expect a moment near the climax where she finally reveals what she knows, and it changes everything. Theory 3. Robin will rebuild Ohara on Elbaf, the new Ohara theory. This theory is way more wholesome and post-plot. Robin will rebuild the legacy of Ohara on Elbaf, turning it into a new haven for archaeology and truth. It all goes back to her origin. Robin was the only survivor of Ohara, the island of scholars destroyed by the world government for seeking forbidden knowledge. That tragedy shaped her entire life. But now, for the first time in forever, Robin isn't alone. She has allies. She has people willing to fight to protect the truth. And more importantly, she has books. Actual books salvaged from Ohara, hidden, preserved, and now in the hands of Saul and the Elbaf giants. Here's the vision. After the final war, when the world begins to rebuild, Robin doesn't just disappear or retire. She becomes the founder of a new Ohara, built on Elbaf, a place where knowledge is free, history is protected, and future scholars can study without fear of annihilation. Why Elbaf? Because it's the perfect place. The giants are strong, they live long lives, and under Saul's influence, they're becoming more educated and curious. They're not just warriors anymore, they're growing. With Robin's guidance, they could become the guardians of history, and if someone tries to erase this new Ohara like last time, they'll have to go through an army of massive librarians with axes. It's poetic. The island that once hosted the world's knowledge was burned down by fear, but now, thanks to Robin, that knowledge is alive again, and better protected than ever. Plus, it's a legacy move. Robin's goal was never to be a war hero or a political figure. It was to preserve the truth, to uncover what the world government tried to hide, and this theory gives her exactly that, a place where that mission continues long after the Straw Hat's journey ends. Imagine the final scene. Years after the story ends, a young scholar walks into the great library of Elbaf. They see Robin, older, wiser, still reading, still smiling. The camera pans over thousands of books, poneglyph translations, Void Century research, and a plaque that reads, "In memory of Ohara, in defiance of silence." Yeah, that hits. Theory 1. Jinbei has a hidden berserker transformation. Alright, let's kick things off with the wildest idea. Jinbei has an untapped berserker state, a kind of primal transformation only fishmen can access. Now, this isn't just headcanon pulled from thin air. The theory comes straight from Arlong's old statements in the manga. He once mentioned that fishmen have the ability to enter a berserker-like state, an instinctual power-up that makes them faster, stronger, and much more dangerous. In Arlong's case, his eyes turned red, and he went beast mode for a short time. That sounds suspiciously like a shonen power-up trigger, and if someone as mid-tier as Arlong can do it, imagine what Jinbei could do with it. The logic here is that Oda teased this ability early on, and it's just been lying dormant, waiting to resurface in someone who truly represents the pinnacle of Fishman strength. That's Jinbei, no contest. He's the most respected Fishman in the series, former warlord of the sea, master of Fishman karate, and now a Straw Hat. So how would this berserker state look? Picture Jinbei in battle against someone like Blackbeard or one of his top commanders. Things are getting intense. Maybe he's injured. Maybe the crew is in danger. Then bam, eyes go red, muscles tighten, his movements get erratic but powerful, and he starts tearing through his enemies with raw instinct, faster and stronger than ever before. No strategy, no calm demeanor, just rage, honor, and instinct. It wouldn't be a permanent form, more like a break glass in case of emergency moment, and narratively, it would show that even Jinbei, who is usually the calm, reliable one, has a deep well of emotion and primal energy buried inside. Also consider the timing. Many Straw Hats got major power-ups in Wano, Sanji with his exoskeleton, Robin with Demonio Fleur, Luffy with Gear 5. Jinbei didn't get a major new ability, just showed off more of the same awesome Fishman karate, so he's due. This Berserker mode would be a perfect final upgrade for him in the coming war. Theory 2. Jinbei will become the leader of Fishman Island and bring his people to the surface. This one hits way more on the emotional side of things. Jinbei will be the one to finally lead fishmen to the surface world, completing the dreams of Queen Otohime and Fisher Tiger. This has been building for decades in the story. Fishman Island has always been a symbol of discrimination, isolation, and suffering. Queen Otohime tried to change that with peace. Fisher Tiger tried through revolution, both failed. But Jinbei, he's the perfect balance of both. Strong, respected, and calm enough to lead, but also tough enough to fight when necessary. The idea here is that after the final war, maybe after the world government is restructured or destroyed, there will finally be a window of opportunity for fishmen to come up to the surface. And Jinbei, now a global hero thanks to his journey with Luffy, will be the one to guide them. And this isn't just symbolism, it's Jinbei's purpose. His entire journey has revolved around helping his people, from being in the Sun Pirates, to serving under Whitebeard, to joining Big Mom for protection, to ultimately risking everything to join Luffy. Every move he's made has been about protecting fishmen. Now imagine the ending. Fishman Island is no longer hidden under the sea. Jinbei leads a migration to a new home, maybe somewhere safe in the new world, maybe even Elbaf or somewhere revolutionary. People see fishmen for who they really are. The kids can live without fear. Humans and fishmen work together. It's redemption, it's hope, and it's powerful as hell. And what seals it, Jinbei's position in the Straw Hats. He's not just a crew member, he's a living example of peace between humans and fishmen. He fights alongside humans, he trusts them, he believes in them. So when the dust settles, he's the one who's gonna be able to tell his people, it's time. We can live under the same sky now. Theory 3. Jinbei will unlock a new form of Fishman karate that controls the environment. Now here's a technical one for the martial arts nerds out there. Jinbei is going to take Fishman karate to the next level and use it to manipulate the environment on a massive scale. You already know that Fishman karate is unique. It lets Jinbei use the moisture in the air and even manipulate water like a non-Logia user. That alone is crazy powerful, but the theory says he's only scratched the surface. The future of Fishman karate, using water to create tidal waves, whirlpools, barriers, or even redirect attacks on a battlefield scale. Think about it like this. Jinbei is to Fishman karate what Luffy is to the Gomu Gomu no Mi. He's pushing its limits, breaking expectations. He's not just using it to punch harder, he's reshaping how the entire art works. In a war zone, this new form would let him pull water from the air and use it to create shields. Turn puddles into projectiles, use surrounding rivers, lakes, or even blood, dark, to amplify his attacks. Disrupt enemy formations with water pressure shockwaves. It'd be like a pseudo-water Logia ability without the fruit. There's even a possibility that this new form becomes named, like an advanced style or awakening of the martial art. Maybe he teaches it to other fishmen later. Maybe he creates a school or dojo after the war. And it fits. Jinbei is a martial artist, but also a leader and mentor. It would be perfect for him to end the series not only as a hero, but as the man who reinvented Fishman karate into something legendary. This would also shut down the idea that Jinbei is outpaced by the rest of the Straw Hats. Not even close. This evolution would make him one of the most dangerous fighters on the seas, hands down. Theory 1. Zoro will turn the Wado Ichimonji into a Black Blade. Let's start with the big one. The theory that Zoro is gonna turn the Wado Ichimonji into a Black Blade. This is practically a guarantee at this point, not even a maybe. It's like a future spoiler just waiting to happen. So we know there are swords in One Piece that are considered Black Blades. Mihawk's Yoru is one of them, and even though Oda hasn't fully explained what it takes to turn a sword black, the idea is that it happens when the user infuses their sword with Haki consistently over a long period. It's a process, a commitment, a bond between between warrior and weapon, and when that bond reaches its peak, boom, the blade becomes black forever. Now, Zoro has 3 swords, but only one of them is really his. The Wado Ichimonji, the blade that belonged to Kuina, the one tied to his childhood, to his promise, to his entire motivation. That sword isn't just a weapon to Zoro, it's his soul. So if any sword is gonna be permanently transformed, it has to be that one. The theory says Zoro will turn it into a black blade during his ultimate battle, either against Mihawk or against Shiryu. Both make sense. If it's Mihawk, then Zoro forges the blade during the fight and wins, proving he's the new strongest swordsman. If it's Shiryu, maybe Shiryu defeats Mihawk earlier, possibly through cheap tricks, and Zoro takes him down to avenge Mihawk and claim the top spot. Either way, the Wado Ichimonji glowing black mid-fight would be a total goosebumps moment. It wouldn't just be about strength, it'd be about legacy, memory, and completing his journey, and narratively, it fits like a glove. Black blades are a huge mystery in the series. Oda's been sitting on that concept since Thriller Bark, so having Zoro figure it out, live it, and do it makes perfect sense. Especially with Enma teasing that transformation already, and who knows, maybe after turning the Wado black, he turns all 3, triple black blade style. Let's go. But the theory holds that Wado comes first, and that one has emotional weight behind it. It's not just a sword, it's Kuina, it's childhood, it's a promise kept. Theory 2, Zoro's eye is closed because it's hiding a hidden power. Alright, theory 2 is an old one, and yeah, it's meme-worthy at this point, but it still has potential. Zoro's closed eye is hiding a secret power. Ever since the time skip, Zoro's been rocking that closed left eye. We've never seen it open. No explanation, no injury, just a scar and nothing more. And this is weird, because in One Piece, if someone loses an eye, they usually still use it. Shanks, Sabo, Rayleigh, they all have eye scars, but their eyes are wide open. So why is Zoro's closed? The theory says he's keeping it shut because it hides something dangerous. A latent ability, maybe it's tied to observation haki on steroids or some cursed vision Mihawk gave him during their training. Maybe he's suppressing something to avoid accidentally going full monster mode. It could even be a form of haki we haven't fully seen yet, like Future Sight but dialed up to 100. Now yeah, people joke that Zoro's eye has a Sharingan or that he's hiding the Rinnegan, but jokes aside, the mystery is real. If Oda gave him a scar and closed the eye for no reason, it'd be bizarre storytelling. Here's where the theory gets spicy. Zoro will open his eye in the most critical moment of the story, not just because he needs more power, but because something unlocks. Maybe his vision expands, maybe he becomes hyper aware in battle, maybe he sees the flow of haki, something changes, and narratively, it tracks. Zoro's the kind of guy who holds back until the moment calls for it. Think of it like Goku removing the weighted clothes before a serious fight. If Zoro's been self-limiting himself this whole time, keeping that eye closed until he absolutely needs to go full power. It's the perfect setup for a late stage power boost. He's had major fights, King, Pika, Killer, but maybe his real awakening hasn't hit yet. This eye could be the trigger, the transformation from warrior to legend. Is this theory likely? Honestly, probably not, but if it happens, it'll be one of the most hype scenes in the entire series. Theory 3, Zoro will open a dojo after the final war and train the next generation, including girls like Kuina. Let's round this out with a post-endgame theory. Zoro will retire and open a dojo, teaching the next generation of swordsmen and swordswomen. It's simple, but it hits deep. After Zoro becomes the world's strongest swordsman and helps Luffy become Pirate King, what's left for him? He's not the type to sit on a throne. He doesn't want fame or luxury. He lives for the sword, and he fights for those he believes in. So what happens when there are no more battles to fight? He gives back. This theory says Zoro returns to the dojo where he trained as a kid, the one where Kina fell down the stairs, or whatever really happened. And instead of just hanging out, he becomes the new master. He trains young kids, helps them discover their style, and spreads the art of the sword. But here's the best part, he opens the dojo to girls. Zoro saw firsthand how Kuina's potential was crushed by societal expectations. She was told she couldn't be the best because she was a girl, and that haunted Zoro. Now that he is the best, he has the power to rewrite that narrative. He starts mentoring anyone who wants to learn. Boys, girls, whoever. He shows them that strength comes comes from spirit, not gender. He passes on what he learned from Mihawk, from his own journey, and maybe even from his opponents. He becomes the bridge between old and new. It's the most peaceful, fulfilling end Zoro could get. No more blood, no more war, just discipline, training, and wisdom. And imagine the legacy, a generation of elite swordsmen and swordswomen who all say, "I learned from Zoro, the man who fought the Pirate King's battles." Maybe one of them even looks like Quina. Maybe one of them becomes the next greatest swordsman, and Zoro, smiling with a sake bottle, just nods like good. It'd be emotional, powerful, and honestly, perfect. Theory 1. Luffy will unlock a new form beyond Gear 5, like Gear 5 Plus or a Final Awakening. Let's start with the most straightforward and hype-packed idea. Luffy hasn't reached his final form yet. Yeah, Gear 5 is amazing, hilarious, powerful, cartoonish, but that doesn't mean it's the end. The theory goes like this. While Gear 5 is Luffy's awakened state, it might not be the complete awakening of the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika. We've seen how Oda loves to surprise us with extra forms. Remember how Gear 4 had Bound Man, Snake Man, and Tank Man? So why would Gear 5 not have variations too? Think about it. Gear 5 debuted in 2022. One Piece will likely keep running until at least 2027 to 2030. Are we really going to watch Luffy use the same form for the next 5+ years without any upgrades? It doesn't feel like Oda's style. Fans get bored and merchandise needs fresh designs. Yeah, that matters too. So what kind of evolution could we get? This theory suggests we'll see either a Gear 5 Plus, like a refined, stronger, more complete version of the awakening, a god mode form where Luffy fully embodies the sun god, maybe glowing, maybe more serious, maybe faster and more lethal, or even a dark version of Nika. Sounds wild, but it's been floated before, like an inner conflict where Luffy taps into a dangerous, destructive version of his powers under extreme stress. We don't know the full ceiling of Nika's abilities. The fruit itself is mysterious. Joy Boy had it before, and he failed. Maybe that's the key. Luffy has to go beyond what Joy Boy could do. Gear 5 might be what Joy Boy used, but Luffy, he'll take it further. Narratively, it would be sick. Imagine Luffy losing to Blackbeard or Emu, and suddenly, boom, he snaps into a whole new state. Maybe it's triggered by protecting someone. Maybe his heart beats at a new rhythm. Whatever it is, it shocks everyone, and he turns the tide of the war in that moment. So yeah, Gear 5 ain't the end. It's the doorway, and what comes after is probably going to blow the roof off the fandom. Theory 2. Luffy will talk to Joy Boy or Roger using the voice of all things. Now this one's weird, but really cool. The theory says Luffy will have a conversation with Joy Boy, Gul D, Roger, or both, despite them being dead. How's that supposed to happen? Through something Oda introduced long ago, the voice of all things. Luffy has shown he can hear it. He understood Zunisha. He picked up things that others couldn't. So what if the voice of all things isn't just about listening to whales and poneglyphs? What if it's about communicating with the past? The theory is that somewhere along the journey, maybe at Laugh Tale or in a super spiritual moment, Luffy taps into this voice and reaches the echo of Joy Boy or Roger's will. We're not talking ghosts or spirits. This would be more like a memory or a soul-deep conversation that transcends time. Fans imagine a scene where Luffy sits down, maybe in a dream, maybe in a space outside reality, and Joy Boy appears, or Roger, or both. They chat, joke, fight, laugh. Luffy says he'll succeed where they failed. Joy Boy tells him he's finally the right guy to carry the torch. It sounds crazy, but think about how emotional and poetic it would be. Luffy doesn't idolize Roger, but he walks his path. He carries the inherited will, and unlike others, he does it his way. Talking to those two giants of the past would validate Luffy's journey, but also let them pass on unfinished business. Maybe they give advice. Maybe they leave cryptic last words. Maybe Joy Boy just laughs and says, "You figured it out, huh?" And if you tie this theory into Brook's soul powers, or some ancient poneglyph type mechanism, it's not even that hard to justify. One Piece has talking ships after all. This is way less of a stretch. Is it likely? Who knows, but if it happens, you can bet fans will lose their minds. And honestly, Luffy and Joy Boy sitting at a table, cracking jokes before the final war? I'm down. Theory 3. Luffy isn't truly free. He's a prisoner of destiny. Now for the most philosophical and emotionally deep theory. Luffy isn't really free and never has been. This one hits hard because it challenges everything Luffy stands for. His whole journey is about freedom. He doesn't want to rule, doesn't want power, just wants to live on his own terms. He's the sun god, the joyful warrior, the guy who breaks chains. That's who he is. But what if that's exactly what was meant to happen? Look at the facts. Luffy inherited Roger's will. He ate the Nika fruit by chance. He was saved by Shanks, trained by Rayleigh, mentored by Garp, and carried by fate time and time again. The stars aligned for him to become Joy Boy. There's even a moment in the manga where someone says, maybe it's not his dream, it's his destiny. That line sticks. Because if Luffy is destined to do all this, is he really free? Or is he just a cog in a prophecy machine? This theory suggests that Oda is setting up a meta-narrative twist, that One Piece isn't just about reaching Laugh Tale, it's about breaking free from destiny itself, that Luffy's true final challenge won't be beating Imu or changing the world. It'll be rejecting the idea that he was meant to do any of it. Maybe the final poneglyph says, this is the end. Joy Boy will do XYZ, and Luffy says, nah. Maybe he finds the One Piece and doesn't want to use it the way everyone expects. Maybe he doesn't want to be Joy Boy. Maybe the real ending is Luffy finally making a choice that breaks the cycle. That would be bold, deep, a total gut punch for fans. But it would make Luffy's freedom real, because right now, everything he's done has felt like it was guided. The world government feared him before he was even strong. His bounty reflects his destiny, not his crimes. He's not a rogue, he's fated. So this theory flips the story. The man who wants to be the most free in the world is actually trapped in the most rigid fate of all, and only by denying that fate can he be truly free. Damn. 7 theories about Rocks. When we talk about Rocks D. Xebec, we're talking about a name that carries an enormous weight in the One Piece world. Even though we don't know his full face, even though we've barely seen him directly on screen, his presence feels massive. This guy was the captain of the most insane pirate crew in history. Kaido, Big Mom, Whitebeard, Shiki, Captain John, literal monsters of the seas all under the same flag. So the theory that he might still be alive? Yeah, that's the kind of idea that instantly shakes the entire fan base. But is it just a wild guess, or is there actually solid ground to believe it? Here's where the whole thing starts making sense. First of all, the way Oda has been handling the information around Rocks is just too deliberate. For decades inside the story timeline, nobody ever really talked about him. Even among legends like Roger and Garp, his name wasn't tossed around that much. Suddenly, out of nowhere, we get the God Valley incident revealed. 38 years ago, supposedly, this dude disappears, along with the island itself after a legendary battle between his crew and the alliance of Garp and Roger. But the problem is, we never actually saw him die. No body, no flashback of his defeat, nothing concrete. In One Piece, if there's no body, there's always room for questions. Now, let's zoom in on the importance of this. Think about how much time passed before we ever heard about Rocks. Up until the Wano arc, the name Rocks D. Xebec was just absent from the narrative, and even when it finally showed up, it wasn't just a casual name drop. The way Sengoku explained it in Marineford felt like Oda saying, hey, this is important, remember this. But the weird part, when we get the God Valley incident explained, the focus isn't really on Rocks himself. It's on Garp becoming the hero of the Marines. It's on Roger and Garp teaming up. Big Mom and Kaido are mentioned too, sure, but Rocks? Again, barely anything. And that's exactly why the theory of him still being alive makes sense. Why bring up this dude so late in the story if his only purpose is background lore? Why keep his face hidden? Why keep teasing his name here and there, in Kuma's flashback, in mentions by Blackbeard, but never giving the full picture? Oda knows how to close a story arc when he wants to. He knows how to kill a character off properly if their role is done. But with Rocks, it feels like every time we're about to get answers, Oda pulls the curtain down again. The way One Piece handles dead characters has a pattern. You can usually tell when Oda wants to leave a door open. Look at characters like Sabo, Pell, or even Bon Clay. If you don't see a body, it's not over. But more importantly, Oda only puts that kind of narrative attention on people who are still gonna play a part in the story. Rocks hasn't even been given a full proper flashback yet. We've seen glimpses, shadows, and silhouettes, but never the man himself. And when Oda keeps a face hidden, oh, you know it means something. It's a classic move from him. It's the same thing he did with Imu for so long. We only saw the silhouette, the mystery kept building, and we knew that the payoff would come later. Another thing that adds fuel to this theory is the way Rox has been talked about by other characters. Whenever someone mentions him, it's with this mixture of fear, respect, and curiosity. Even Sengoku didn't talk about him like, oh yeah, he's long gone, no worries. Instead, it feels like they're still kinda haunted by the guy. And let's be real, this was a man strong enough to hold the likes of Kaido, Big Mom, and Whitebeard under his command. That's not someone you just erase from history without a trace. But if he's alive, where the hell is he? Why hasn't he shown up in all this time? Well, that's where things get interesting. If we assume Rox survived God Valley, there's a decent chance he's been hiding, biding his time. And here's the thing, the Marines and the world government wanted his name erased. They didn't just beat him, they wanted him forgotten. His name was scrubbed from history books. That's not normal treatment, even for a pirate. The government doesn't usually care that much about just deleting names. They didn't erase Roger's name, for example. But with Rox, they went full blackout mode. That suggests that his ideology, his goal of becoming king of the world, scared the absolute hell out of the Celestial Dragons and the world government. And let's not forget one of the key lines about Rox, that he was the pirate who dared to challenge the world itself, that he wanted not just to be the pirate king, but the ruler of everything. That kind of ambition doesn't die easy. It's not something you let go of just because your crew fell apart. If he's alive, he's probably still carrying that same dream, and if he is alive, then you can bet Oda's saving him for the absolute endgame. Think about how Wano ended. Kaido and Big Mom are out of the picture. At least for now, the Yonko system is crumbling. Blackbeard is making his move. The world government is on the defensive with the revolutionaries pushing hard, and Emu finally stepping into the light. If there's ever been a perfect moment for a final boss figure like Rox to emerge from the shadows, it's now. And here's another angle that makes the theory even more compelling. Blackbeard. We know Blackbeard has a weird obsession with history. His ship is literally called the Saber of Xebec. That's not a random choice. And Blackbeard's whole deal is picking up the pieces left behind by others. Whitebeard's fruit stolen, his own ship and flag, named after Rox, his obsession with darkness and chaos. Feels a lot like he's walking the same path that Rox once walked. So here's the question. Does Blackbeard know something we don't? Has he been in contact with Rox? Or maybe even working under him without fully realizing it? Or could it be that Blackbeard is just the next generation of the same nightmare that Rox once represented? Now, let's talk logistics for a second. How old would Rox be right now? Well, if the God Valley incident was 38 years ago, and if we assume he was at least in his 30s or 40s at that time, that puts him somewhere in his 70s or 80s now. But hey, look at Garp, look at Sengoku, look at Rayleigh. Old doesn't mean weak in One Piece. In fact, the old guys tend to be absolute monsters. So Rox showing up as an old but terrifying figure, totally within the realm of possibility. But here's the real kicker. If he's still alive, it explains why Oda hasn't shown his face. You don't hide someone's face in flashbacks for no reason, especially not someone this important. If he was only going to appear in flashbacks, there's no reason to keep the mystery going. But if he's going to appear in the present timeline, oh, now it makes sense. Now we understand why Oda's holding that card so close to his chest. There's also this little meta detail that fans love to bring up. Oda said years ago that he has a surprise plan that will shake the entire One Piece world. Some people thought it was Gear 5. Some thought it was Joy Boy stuff. But what if part of that surprise is the return of Rox D. Xebec? What if he's not a piece of the past, but a player in the final conflict? The theory doesn't just rely on wishful thinking. It's backed by the way Oda has handled this character narratively. Every choice, from the way Rox was introduced, to the lack of face reveals, to the constant teasing without payoff, feels like setup, like Oda's laying the groundwork for something massive. And given how much the world government fears history, it fits perfectly that their biggest nightmare, the man who once tried to rule the world, might still be out there. There's also the symbolic side of it. One Piece is a story about inherited will, dreams that don't die, even when the dreamers do. But what if sometimes the dreamer doesn't die either? What if Rox represents the literal continuation of his own will? It would flip the whole inherited will concept on its head. Everyone's been inheriting the will of D as Luffy, Roger, Dragon, Law, Blackbeard. But Rox? Maybe he doesn't need anyone to inherit it because he never let it go in the first place. If that's true, then we might be looking at the true final antagonist of One Piece. Not Blackbeard, not Emu, but Rox D. Xebec himself stepping out from the shadows one last time to finish what he started. And honestly, that would be one hell of a payoff. So here's the deal with one of the wildest but also most entertaining theories about Rox D. Xebec. The idea that the reason Oda hasn't shown his face yet is because there's something way too obvious about it. Something that would instantly make every fan, even the most casual ones, go, wait, what? The theory is simple but has massive implications. Rox D. Xebec could actually be the father of Buggy the Clown. I know, it sounds nuts at first, like some gag tier speculation, but let's be real here. Oda has always played with these kinds of tricks where something that seems like a joke turns out to be serious, or at least has a deeper purpose. If you take a second to really think about it, this theory has a surprising amount of logic behind it, and that's what makes it so much fun to unpack. It's not just about the surface level Buggy is a joke character, haha. It's about how Oda builds hype, mystery, and payoff into the very DNA of One Piece, and this theory fits right into that structure like a glove. First off, let's talk about one of the most important details that supports this theory. Rock's face has never been shown, not once. And in One Piece, when a character's face is hidden for that long, especially when that character is supposedly dead or from the past, it's always for a reason. Oda doesn't just hide faces for fun. He does it because the reveal would either spoil something major, or because the face itself means something. And here's the kicker. If Rox's face is hidden because it looks too much like Buggy's, specifically the iconic red nose, then suddenly it all clicks into place. Why is Buggy's nose such a big deal in the series? Because it's not just a visual gag. Oda constantly reminds us of it. Every time someone insults him, every time someone describes him, it's always about the nose. Red nose this, clown nose that. It's literally the most recognizable thing about him, and it's not just for laughs. Oda doesn't repeat things for no reason. When a joke is this consistent across 1,000 chapters, it's telling you there's something deeper behind it. Think about it. Buggy's nose has been mentioned so much that it's almost weird how obsessed the narrative is with it. And if Rox also had a big red clown nose, man, that would explain the mystery immediately. The fans would lose their minds. Now, let's get into why it would make story sense. Buggy has always been treated as a joke in the series, but the crazy thing is, he keeps climbing the ladder of power anyway. First he's just some side villain in Orange Town, then he's at Logtown, crossing paths with Luffy again. Fast forward, and he's at Marineford, somehow surviving in the middle of the most dangerous war we've seen. After the war, he gets his own crew boosted by ex-prisoners from Impel Down. Then, out of nowhere, he becomes one of the Shichibukai, and now, Yonko status. Yonko, the guy who trips over his own shoes and gets his ass kicked every other appearance, is sitting at the top table with people like Blackbeard, Luffy, and Shanks. You could argue it's just Oda making fun of him, but here's the thing. What if that's the point? What if Buggy's entire joke, the "I'm not actually strong, I'm just lucky" bit, is actually part of his bloodline? What if the reason Buggy keeps failing upward is because he's inherited not just Rox's blood, but maybe even his insane luck or charisma? Because let's be honest, commanding a crew like Rox did wasn't about brute strength alone. You don't gather Kaido, Big Mom, Whitebeard, Shiki, and Captain John on one ship unless you're damn good at manipulation, leadership, or sheer presence. And Buggy, despite all his flaws, somehow has that same magnetism. People follow him. Even Mihawk and Crocodile are stuck on the same ship as him right now, whether they like it or not. Imagine the narrative punch if Buggy's entire life of accidental success is the result of him being the son of the most dangerous pirate in history. It would add this tragic but hilarious layer to Buggy's story. Like, he was always meant to be important, but he never knew it. Or worse, maybe he does know, deep down, and he's just running from it, because how the hell do you live up to something like that? If your dad was the guy who tried to become the king of the world and nearly burned the whole system down, wouldn't you want to be a nobody? Wouldn't you want to hide behind clown makeup and dumb jokes instead of facing that legacy head on? It would also explain why Oda is playing this weird long game with Buggy's character arc. Because even though Buggy's been comic relief for so long, every once in a while we get these moments where you can tell there's more going on under the surface. Like when he talks about Roger. Buggy sailed on the same ship as Shanks under Gold D. Roger. That's not small potatoes. Roger didn't just pick up random clowns off the street. There was something about Buggy that made him worthy of being on that crew, and maybe, just maybe, it wasn't because of skill, but because of who his father was. Now here's where things get even crazier. There's this whole speculation speculation about the D in One Piece. The will of D, the people who carry it, the ones who are destined to bring about the great upheaval. Buggy doesn't have the D initial in his name as far as we know. But what if that's another reason why Oda's kept Rox's face and full identity secret? Because if Rox had a red nose and was confirmed as Buggy's father, we'd instantly start asking, does that mean Buggy also carries the D? Is he Buggy D Clown? That would be such an Oda move, honestly. A complete subversion of expectations. Everyone's expecting the D Clan to be these big, heroic, powerful figures. But here's Buggy, the ultimate underdog, the living meme, quietly carrying the D without anyone knowing. It would be the biggest twist and one of the most poetic plays Oda could pull. Plus, think about how Buggy's path mirrors so much of what we know about the Rox pirates. Rox was all about chaos. He wasn't interested in the Pirate King title like Roger. He wanted world domination, total control, but at the same time, his crew was a mess. All these huge egos forced to work together, barely held in line by Rox's leadership. Buggy's Cross Guild? Kind of the same energy, right? Mihawk and Crocodile have their own goals. They're not really following Buggy because they believe in him. They're just stuck in the chaos, but somehow Buggy holds the center. Even by accident, he's the glue that keeps it all together. Sounds familiar? Yeah, that's the Rox dynamic all over again. What's even more fascinating is how Oda could use this reveal to deepen Buggy's character in a way that still keeps his comedy intact. Imagine the reveal happening not in some epic battle, but in a moment of complete disaster for Buggy. Like he's running away from a fight, someone insults his nose again, and then out of nowhere, a major character drops the bomb. You look just like your father. And when Buggy freaks out, trying to deny it, the truth spills out piece by piece. Maybe there are records. Maybe someone like Garp, Sengoku, or even an ex-member of the Rox crew confirms it. And in classic Oda fashion, the reveal would be dramatic, funny, and devastating all at the same time. This also opens up so many doors for the endgame of One Piece. Because if Buggy is Rox's son, that gives him a direct tie to the final conflicts of the series. It puts him right into the middle of the power struggle, whether he wants it or not. Suddenly the Marines, the world government, and even Blackbeard would have a reason to take him seriously. He wouldn't just be a clown anymore. He'd be the heir of the most dangerous pirate who ever lived, and the irony is that he'd probably be the last person who wants that responsibility. But if there's one thing One Piece loves, it's forcing characters to confront their destiny whether they're ready for it or not. Luffy is Joy Boy, whether he knows it or not. Law carries the D and has been dragged into the D legacy. Even Blackbeard, with all his scheming, might be a puppet of fate more than he realizes. Buggy stepping into that same spotlight, the spotlight he's been dodging his whole life, would be the ultimate punchline and the ultimate payoff. Another little breadcrumb worth mentioning, the constant parallels between Buggy and Shanks. They started on the same ship, had the same opportunities, but went in completely different directions. Shanks became the respected Yonko, the cool-headed, powerful leader. Buggy became the joke, but imagine how brutal that would feel if Buggy always knew that his bloodline was actually more infamous than Shanks. If deep down he's been carrying this weight, this legacy he never wanted, while watching Shanks rise without that kind of burden, it adds a whole new layer to their relationship. Maybe Shanks knows the truth, maybe he doesn't. But either way, the contrast between them gets way more interesting if Buggy is the one tied directly to Rox. And here's where Oda could really go wild with the payoff, because if Buggy has that connection, it could also give him a sudden moment of true importance when the world starts falling apart. Maybe it's not about him fighting the final battle or becoming Pirate King. Maybe it's about him being the unexpected key to stopping something or unlocking a piece of the lost history. Oda loves to hide serious plot points behind the funny characters. Hell, the whole series is named after a joke. One Piece sounds like a goofy name, but the treasure at the center of it all could be the biggest truth in the world. So wrapping it all together, the theory that Rox D. Xebec is Buggy's father isn't just some silly haha clown nose joke. It actually fits right into the structure of how One Piece tells its story. The consistent nose gag, the hidden face of Rox, the weird way Buggy keeps rising in power, the parallels between him and the Rox crew, the potential D connection, it all builds up to something that feels totally possible in Oda's world. And honestly, if this turns out to be true, it would be one of the greatest narrative twists in One Piece history. Equal parts funny, tragic, and brilliant. Exactly the kind of twist Oda loves to hit us with when we least expect it. One of the most talked about theories when it comes to Rock's Dig Zabek, and honestly one that makes a scary amount of sense if you sit down and really think about it, is the idea that Rox was actually the original user of the Yami Yami no Mi, the same darkness fruit that Blackbeard has right now. This isn't just random speculation pulled out of thin air either. This theory ties directly into the core themes of One Piece, and the weird parallels between Blackbeard and Rox that have been sprinkled throughout the series. The more you dig into it, the more it starts feeling like Oda has been leaving these little breadcrumbs for us all along, and this theory just connects the dots in a way that honestly feels too perfect to ignore. So let's break down why this would make sense. First, you have to look at Blackbeard's obsession with the Yami Yami no Mi. This guy spent decades playing the long game inside Whitebeard's crew, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the exact moment to snatch this fruit. And the moment he got it, he treated it like it was the ultimate prize. Like this was the key to everything he's ever wanted. That's not normal. We've seen people hunt for powerful fruits in One Piece before, but the way Blackbeard talks about the Yami Yami no Mi is different. He says things like, "This fruit chose me," and acts like it's his destiny. There's a deeper connection between him and this fruit that feels spiritual, almost religious. But what if that connection isn't just about fate or will? What if that fruit used to belong to someone he idolizes, someone whose dream he's carrying forward? That's where Rox comes in. Remember that Blackbeard's ship is literally called the Saber of Xebec. He didn't name it after Whitebeard. He didn't name it after Roger. He named it after Rox D. Xebec, a pirate from a generation before his time. That's not some casual name drop. That's straight up homage. And considering how obsessed Blackbeard is with history, with learning the true nature of the world, with inheriting the wrong kind of will, it makes total sense that he would follow in Rox's footsteps. But here's the thing, if Rox was the original Yami Yami user, that would explain so much about both of their stories. The Yami Yami no Mi is not just any Logia, it's unique. Instead of giving you the usual elemental intangibility like fire, ice, or smoke, it makes you a black hole. You still take damage like a normal person, but in return, you can absorb and cancel out other devil fruit powers. That ability alone is a terrifying concept, but paired with the fact that Blackbeard also figured out how to hold two fruits at the same time, something that should be impossible, it all starts to feel like he's following a blueprint that Rox may have already discovered. Think about what we know about Rox. The dude was ambitious enough to want to rule the world, not just be the pirate king. He wasn't out there for the same reasons as Roger or Whitebeard. His goal wasn't freedom or glory or family. He wanted domination, control, the throne of the entire world. That's literally what the Yami Yami no Mi is all about at its core. The power to absorb, suppress, and dominate other abilities. Symbolically, it fits Rox like a glove. This is not a fruit for someone who wants to coexist with others. This is a fruit for someone who wants to take away the power of everyone around him and leave them powerless beneath his shadow. Now, let's connect this to the narrative of God Valley. If Rox really did have the Yami Yami no Mi, it makes total sense why the world government would be so desperate to erase every trace of him. They didn't just defeat him, they tried to wipe him from the history books entirely. That's next level erasure, and we know that the world government only goes to that extent when someone is seriously dangerous. Not just strong, but dangerous to the balance of the entire system. Think about Ohara and the scholars trying to uncover the Void Century. Same deal. When the government goes full blackout mode, it's because they're scared of what people might learn. If Rox had the Yami Yami no Mi, and if he was already learning about the true history of the world, maybe even chasing the secrets of the ancient weapons or the Void Century, that would explain why the government was so terrified of him. A guy with that kind of destructive power combined with forbidden knowledge. He's the ultimate threat to the world government, and if he was really looking to control or overthrow the celestial dragons, that darkness fruit would have been the perfect tool for it. There's also the creepy symbolism of the Yami Yami no Mi itself. It's darkness, it's the void, it's literally described as the fruit of darkness. Oda is not the type of writer to just slap on names like that for no reason. Everything in One Piece has layers of meaning, and what better fruit to give the guy whose ambition was to cast his shadow over the entire world. The darkness fruit doesn't just give Rox power, it matches his ideology perfectly. Then there's Blackbeard's line about the fruit choosing him. If the Yami Yami no Mi had a previous owner as powerful as Rox, that phrase takes on a whole new meaning. Maybe the fruit retains some of the will of its previous users. Maybe the fruit is drawn to certain kinds of people people who share the same twisted ambition. That would also explain why Blackbeard is able to use the fruit so effectively right out of the gate. He's not just another random user, he's someone who understands what the fruit was designed for, someone who's studied the life of its previous owner, maybe even learned tricks from Rox's legacy. It also gives a lot more weight to Blackbeard's obsession with eating a second devil fruit, because let's not forget, Rox was surrounded by monsters. Kaido, Big Mom, Whitebeard, Shiki. You think a guy like that would settle for being on the same level as his subordinates? Hell no. If there was anyone crazy enough to experiment with multiple fruits back in the day, it would be Rox. But maybe the reason the world believes it's impossible is because the one guy who figured it out got wiped out before he could pass the knowledge on. That would make Blackbeard the inheritor not just of Rox's will, but also of his methods, his strategy, maybe even his research. This is where the theory gets even deeper, because if you assume Rox had the Yami Yami no Mai, and if you assume he was messing with the idea of multiple devil fruits, then Blackbeard's entire plan suddenly makes sense as a continuation of that same vision. Blackbeard didn't just stumble into these ideas. He's following the same path, picking up where Rox left off, refining the plan with the benefit of more knowledge and less chaos. While Rox was a brute force leader, gathering powerful pirates and forcing them under one flag, Blackbeard is the sneaky, strategic version of that same dream. It's also worth considering the design of the Rox Jolly Roger. That skull with the weird aura around it, people have pointed out how much it looks like it's surrounded by dark energy or shadows. That's not the usual skull and crossbones design. It feels intentional, like it's hinting at the darkness power that Rox might have wielded. If Oda wanted to leave a symbol of Rox's true power without outright saying it, the Jolly Roger design would be the perfect place to hide that clue. This theory also helps explain the obsession Blackbeard has with Hachinosu, the pirate island. That place used to be the base of operations for the Rox pirates. Blackbeard didn't just take over a random island, he claimed the exact same spot where Rox built his empire. That's not coincidence. That's Blackbeard following in his footsteps deliberately. And if you think about it, why would Blackbeard care so much about Rox in the first place if there wasn't some direct link between them? Naming his ship after Rox, taking over Rox's old base, hunting the same devil fruit. It all points to Blackbeard seeing himself as Rox's successor, not Whitebeard's, not Roger's, Rox's. But here's one of the most fascinating parts of the theory. It flips the whole idea of inherited will on its head. Up until now, we've been taught that inherited will in One Piece is mostly about the good guys. Roger's will inherited by Luffy. Oden's will carried by Momonosuke. But what if will can be inherited by villains too? What if Rox's will of domination, chaos, and absolute control didn't die with him? It got passed on to Blackbeard through the fruit, through knowledge, through legacy. That would make the final confrontation between Luffy and Blackbeard not just about pirates fighting for treasure, but about two opposing inherited wills clashing for the future of the world. And that's what makes this theory so satisfying. It doesn't just explain why Blackbeard wanted the Yami Yami no Mi so badly. It connects it to the larger story of One Piece. It ties Blackbeard to the past in a way that gives him real weight as an antagonist, not just as some power-hungry pirate, but as the living embodiment of the chaos that Rox once tried to unleash. It also opens the door for some wild future flashbacks. Imagine finally getting the full God Valley backstory, and instead of just seeing Rox as some generic bad guy, we see him wielding the darkness, crushing his enemies, absorbing their powers, pushing the limits of devil fruit abilities. And then imagine the terror on Garp and Roger's faces, not just because of Rox's army, but because of the horror of the darkness itself. That would make the Battle of God Valley not just a showdown between pirates and marines, but a battle against literal darkness, the same darkness that Blackbeard now controls. If Oda decides to confirm this theory, it would elevate Blackbeard from being the sneaky guy with two fruits to being the inheritor of the most dangerous pirate dream in history, and it would explain why Blackbeard feels like such a uniquely dangerous threat compared to anyone else Luffy has faced. He wouldn't just be another obstacle on the way to the One Piece, he'd be the full evolution of the nightmare that Rox once was. And honestly, that would make Blackbeard the perfect final antagonist, because it wouldn't just be Luffy fighting a guy with crazy powers. It would be Luffy fighting the ultimate representation of domination, control, and darkness. The exact opposite of everything the D-Clan stands for. The exact opposite of Roger's dream of freedom. So yeah, at first this theory sounds like just a fun what if, but the more you dig into it, the more it feels like it could be the real deal. The Yami Yami no Mi wasn't just sitting around waiting for Blackbeard by accident. It was part of a legacy, a curse maybe, a will of its own. And Blackbeard, he's the one crazy enough, ambitious enough, and ruthless enough to pick it up and keep running with it. If that's true, then we haven't just been watching Blackbeard's rise to power. We've been watching the rebirth of Rox D. Xebec dream, wearing a new face, holding the same darkness. And that makes the endgame of One Piece so much more intense than just a race for treasure. It makes it a battle for the soul of the entire world. The fourth theory about Rox D. Xebec suggests something pretty wild, but also fascinating if you stop and think about how devil fruits and souls work in the world of One Piece. The idea is that Rox might have been the original user of the Yomi Yomi no Mai, the Revive fruit, the exact same one that Brook has today. This isn't just a casual, oh maybe he had this fruit type of theory. This idea digs deep into how the mechanics of death, devil fruits, and souls function in the story, and it uses that logic to suggest that Rox might not have truly died at God Valley. Instead, he might have ended up in a situation similar to Brook's, but way darker, with his soul lingering around without being able to return to his body because that body was either destroyed or sunk at the bottom of the sea. What makes this theory so interesting is that it doesn't rely on simple wishful thinking like maybe he escaped. It uses the canon rules we already know. The Yomi Yomi no Mi allows its user to come back to life after death, but it doesn't just magic the body back into perfect condition. If the body is inaccessible, like in Brook's case where he couldn't find his body for years, the soul can be left wandering, stuck in limbo, unable to properly return to the physical world. That's why Brook came back as a skeleton. The power was still active, but the body was too far gone. Now, imagine Rox in that exact same situation, but under much worse circumstances. God Valley wasn't just any battle, it was absolute chaos. We know the island supposedly disappeared or was destroyed completely. If Rox's body was crushed, sunk, or otherwise obliterated during the fight, then even if the Yomi Yomi no Mi activated like it was supposed to, his soul wouldn't have been able to return. But just like Brook, that wouldn't have meant true death. It would have meant a wandering soul, a spirit stuck between life and death, with all that rage, ambition, and hatred festering for nearly 40 years. Now, here's where things start to get really crazy. Think about the willpower someone like Rox must have had to lead monsters like Kaido, Big Mom, and Whitebeard. This wasn't some small-time pirate who stumbled into power. This was a man with charisma, force, and vision strong enough to command the most dangerous pirates of his generation. If someone like that became a soul trapped in the world, you can bet that soul wouldn't just float around quietly. We're talking about the kind of spirit that could manipulate, influence, and maybe even possess. This isn't your average ghost story. This is the soul of one of the most terrifying figures in the world, refusing to die, refusing to let go of his dream. The big question here is whether this would even be possible within the logic of One Piece. But if you really look at the details, Oda has already laid down the groundwork for this to make sense. Souls and life force are actual, tangible things in the One Piece world. We see Big Mom using the Soru Soru no Mi to interact with souls directly, ripping life force from people, implanting it into objects, creating homies. Brook himself uses his soul energy as a fighting technique. Soul-based attacks that literally burn through homies or freeze them. The series treats souls as something real, something that can be manipulated or weaponized. If that's the case, then a soul as powerful as Rox, backed by the abilities of the Yomi Yomi no Mi, could absolutely stick around long after his physical death. The fruit wouldn't just abandon him because the body was lost. The power would still be there, active in the soul itself. But without a vessel to return to, Rox would be a spirit looking for another way to complete his plan. And this is where the theory connects directly to Blackbeard. There's been a ton of speculation about Blackbeard's weird body. Marco himself points out that Blackbeard's body isn't like a normal person's, which is how he can handle 2 devil fruits. But what if it's not just about biology? What if Blackbeard's body is capable of housing more than one soul? What if that strange body is exactly what allowed Rox's lingering spirit to anchor itself to Blackbeard, either by choice or because Blackbeard himself sought out that connection? This isn't saying that Rox is fully in control of Blackbeard, like a puppet master, but imagine Blackbeard growing up filled with resentment and hate, being the perfect target for a vengeful spirit like Rox. A little whisper in his mind here and there, some dreams, maybe even visions of the world Rox wanted to create. Over time, those ideas take root. Blackbeard thinks they're his own ambitions, but really, they're a blend of his desires and Rox's unresolved will. And if Rox's soul really is inside him, even partially, that could explain how Blackbeard knew so much about the old era and the strategies that no one else seemed to have. But what about the Yomi Yomi no Mi itself? How could Brook have it now if Rox had it back then? That's actually one of the most clever parts of this theory. The Yomi Yomi no Mi doesn't activate until the user dies. That's the whole point. The revival only happens post-death. So when Brook died, his soul left his body and started looking for it again, but the fruit's ability kicked in at the moment of death. If Rox died at God Valley and his soul couldn't return because the body was destroyed, the same mechanism could have caused the fruit to reincarnate somewhere else. The fruit could be reborn while the original soul is still lingering, and the fact that Brook's body was lost at sea, just like Rox's might have been, makes their situations eerily similar. But even if the fruit was reborn, the power that Rox had already claimed as part of his soul wouldn't necessarily vanish. His soul could still retain some connection to the power, even if the fruit moved on to someone else. This might explain why the Yomi Yomi no Mi seems to have so much more potential than what Brook has shown us so far. Brook uses it mainly for his second life and a few soul-based attacks, but what if the fruit's true abilities are way deeper than that? What if, in the hands of someone like Rox, the fruit could do more? Like manipulating other souls, binding spirits, or even forcing possession. This could also explain why the Marines and the world government were so desperate to erase every trace of Rox in God Valley. It wasn't just about beating him in a fight, it was about making sure he couldn't come back. But maybe they failed, maybe they destroyed the island, killed the man, but underestimated the power of his fruit and the strength of his will. And now, 40 years later, Rox's ghost might be back in play without anyone realizing it, hidden inside the body of the man who seems most dedicated to picking up where Rox left off. Blackbeard's dream isn't to be Pirate King like Luffy or Roger, it's to rule the world, to dominate, to control. That's not a coincidence. That's exactly the dream Rox had. So whether Blackbeard knows it or not, whether Rox is consciously influencing him or just leaking his will into him through shared ambition, the result is the same. The nightmare of Rox Betsebek might not have died at God Valley. It might have just gone underground, waiting for the right vessel to carry on the plan. The scariest part of this theory is that if it's true, Blackbeard himself might not even realize how much of his own will is actually his. Imagine the horror of discovering that the goals you thought were your own have been shaped by a ghost whispering in your mind since childhood. Imagine realizing that your success, your strategies, your hunger for chaos and domination all came from the spirit of the man the world thought was dead and buried. That would add a whole other level of tragedy and horror to Blackbeard's character, turning him from just a villain into something way more complicated, a guy who might be as much victim as monster. It also would set up a chilling possibility for the final showdown in One Piece. What if defeating Blackbeard isn't just about beating him physically? What if Luffy and the others have to deal with the lingering soul of Rox itself? Maybe the final battle isn't just a clash of fists and haki, but also a fight to finally put down the will of a dead man who refused to die properly. Maybe that's what makes Blackbeard so much harder to kill than anyone else, because killing him isn't enough if the real threat is the thing hiding inside him. And if Oda wants to go really dark with it, he could even show that the reason Blackbeard has two devil fruits is because of this dual soul situation. Maybe it's not just biology, maybe Blackbeard can handle two fruits, because technically there are two entities living inside that body, each one tied to a different fruit, his own soul and Rox's ghost. That would explain why nobody else can pull off what Blackbeard does, because nobody else is carrying around the soul of one of the most dangerous pirates to ever live. This also ties into the larger themes of One Piece about inherited will. We always talk about the will of D as this noble thing, this symbol of freedom and rebellion against oppression. But what if inherited will works both ways? What if evil, domination, and control can be inherited too? Rox's will might be the dark mirror of the will of D. a corrupted version of that unstoppable spirit, and Blackbeard, whether willingly or not, could be the living proof of that. All of this would turn the concept of the will of the dead into a literal active force in the final saga. It wouldn't just be about history repeating itself metaphorically, it would be history literally coming back to haunt the living. In the end, this theory isn't just fun because it's spooky or supernatural. It works because it fits perfectly into the established world of One Piece. It uses the rules we already know, the way devil fruits work, the concept of souls, the cycle of death and rebirth, and it applies them to one of the biggest mysteries in the series in a way that explains so much of what we've seen without breaking the logic of the story. And if it's true, it means the fight against Blackbeard isn't just the fight against a pirate who wants power, it's the fight to finally put an end to Rox D. Xebec nightmare once and for all. One of the most interesting and surprisingly logical theories about Rox D. Xebec is the one that suggests he might not have been the monster the world government made him out to be. The idea here is not that Rox was some misunderstood saint or secret hero, but that the story we've been told about him, the whole evil, world-dominating psycho who gathered the worst criminals to burn the world down narrative, might be only half the truth, if not a complete fabrication. What if Rox wasn't simply chasing power for power's sake? What if his real motivation was to destroy the Celestial Dragons and the world government because he saw them for what they truly are, a corrupt, oppressive system built on the suffering of innocent people? This theory flips the entire view of Rox on its head. Instead of seeing him as the ultimate pirate villain, the theory suggests he might have actually been one of the earliest revolutionaries. Someone whose fight was against the ruling elite, the Celestial Dragons, and their twisted control over the world. But because history is written by the victors, what we know about Rox is likely what the world government wanted everyone to believe. After all, if you're the ones pulling the strings, it's a lot easier to justify wiping someone out if you convince the world they're pure evil. This idea makes way too much sense when you start looking at the context of the God Valley incident itself. God Valley wasn't just some random battlefield, it was a place where the Celestial Dragons were holding one of their infamous human hunts, those disgusting games where they literally hunt people like animals for sport. We know this because Oda confirmed that was happening at God Valley, and that's why Garp was even there in the first place, to protect the Tenryubito. But why would Rox specifically go to God Valley? The standard explanation is, he wanted to become king of the world, but that's too vague. If that was all he wanted, why show up at that exact moment, at that exact place, right when the Celestial Dragons were gathered together for their little sadistic festival? It makes way more sense that Rox went there to hit the system where it hurts. If your goal is to end the oppression caused by the Celestial Dragons, you don't just fight the Marines head on, you strike when the oppressors themselves are exposed. God Valley was basically a huge gathering of the top dogs of the world government, the perfect opportunity to cut off the head of the snake. If Rox's plan was to eliminate the Celestial Dragons directly, then suddenly everything about the God Valley incident takes on a whole new meaning. Think about the way the Marines have always tried to keep the truth about certain events hidden. The Void Century covered up, Ohara's research wiped out, the Will of D ? Still shrouded in mystery. So why wouldn't they do the same with Rox? If he wasn't just some power-hungry lunatic, but actually had a goal that would make people sympathize with him, like freeing slaves and ending the rule of the Tenryubito, then of course the government would spin the narrative. They'd make sure no one remembered him as anything but a tyrant. They'd make sure no one even dared to question their version of history. There's also the fact that none of the actual participants from that era have ever directly called Rox evil. When Sengoku explains the history of Rox, he says that Rox wanted to become king of the world, but he never really explains how or why. There's no detail about Rox's ideology from anyone who actually knew him. Garp, who was there, doesn't openly talk about what Rox did or said. Even Big Mom and Kaido, both former members of his crew, haven't given any personal testimony about what Rox was really like. The silence speaks volumes. If Rox was truly this psychotic madman, you'd think there'd be more first-hand accounts calling him out specifically, but instead, all we have is what the government tells us. This is where the theory becomes even more compelling. If Rox was targeting the Celestial Dragon specifically, it would mean his crew, as chaotic chaotic and unstable as it was more like an army of convenience. Maybe he wasn't best friends with Kaido, Big Mom, or Whitebeard. Maybe he simply gathered the strongest people he could find to break through the government's defenses and reach his real targets. If that's the case, then his crew was never about friendship or loyalty, which explains why they scattered so easily after his fall. They weren't united by ideals. They were united by a temporary goal, and once that goal was crushed, they had no reason to stick together. Now, here's where the theory starts to tie into the bigger themes of One Piece. If you look at what Dragon and the Revolutionary Army are doing right now, their mission is pretty much the same idea. Take down the Celestial Dragons, free the world from their control, expose the corruption of the world government. But Dragon's approach is slow, strategic, building alliances and resistance movements over time. Rox's approach. If this theory is true, Rox was the guy who tried to do it by brute force, by going straight for the heart of the problem all at once. The thing is, even if Rox had good intentions, his methods were probably violent as hell, and that's where this theory doesn't try to paint him as a perfect hero. Rox might have been ruthless, reckless, willing to do horrible things to achieve his goals, but the core of this idea is that his target wasn't the innocent people of the world. It was the rulers who enslaved and destroyed those people's lives. The victims of Rox's violence weren't the common folk, they were the elites who made the world into the nightmare that Luffy and the other D-Clan members are fighting against today. The Revolutionary Army and the D-Clan standing against the Celestial Dragons makes this idea feel even more plausible. If the D-Ors is tied to people who oppose the Celestial Dragons, it wouldn't be shocking if Rox, as a D, shared that same hatred for the world government's regime. His methods might have been wrong, but the goal itself, breaking the system, would line up perfectly with the deeper conflict that's been brewing throughout the entire story. If this theory is true, it also explains why Rox's name is erased from history, while Roger's isn't. Roger was dangerous, sure, but he wasn't directly trying to wipe out the Celestial Dragons. He found the One Piece and learned the truth about the world, but he didn't move to destroy the system. Rox, on the other hand, attacked the system at its core. He didn't just learn about the Void Century, he actively tried to tear down the structure that covered it up. That's why Rox had to be erased completely, not just defeated, not just imprisoned. Erased? No one can be allowed to remember him as anything but a monster. And if you think about how often Oda plays with the idea of history being manipulated, this theory fits right into that pattern. The Void Century was wiped out of the records. The truth about Ohara was destroyed. The history of Joy Boy is still a mystery. Every time someone gets close to exposing the truth, the world government steps in to silence it. Why would it be any different with Rox? Another detail that adds weight to this theory is the way Oda has handled the portrayal of the Marines themselves. Garp is called a hero for what happened at God Valley, but we know Garp hates the Celestial Dragons. He refuses to become an admiral because he doesn't want to serve them. That's always felt like a weird contradiction. Why would the hero of the Marines despise the very people he supposedly protected at God Valley? But if Garp saw what was really going on, if he knew that Rox wasn't completely wrong about the Celestial Dragons, that could explain Garp's complicated feelings about the whole thing. This might also explain why Sengoku talks about Rox in such a strange, hesitant way. He doesn't sound like he's giving the whole story. He sounds like someone reciting the official line because that's all he's allowed to say. Sengoku is a good soldier, but he's also smart enough to question the system he works for. If he knows there's more to the story of Rox but can't say it out loud, that would make perfect sense. In the bigger picture, this theory makes Rox into a tragic figure. Not a pure hero, but someone whose fight against oppression was twisted into a story of villainy by the very people he tried to overthrow. And it fits so well with the overall theme of One Piece. The fight against oppression, the search for freedom, the clash between the rulers and the ruled. If Oda decides to reveal this twist, it would reshape how we understand the history of the One Piece world. It would turn Rox from a background villain into one of the key players in the story's central conflict. And it would show just how far the world government is willing to go to hide the truth. It would also give a lot more emotional weight to the final war that's coming, because if the truth about Rox comes out, if the world learns that he wasn't the monster they were told he was, it could ignite a whole new wave of rebellion. The people who are already starting to question the world government, like the people of Dressrosa, Wano, and other oppressed nations, would have even more reason to rise up. Rox could become a symbol, even in death, of what happens when you stand up to the people in power. In the end, this theory doesn't make Rox Rock's a saint, it doesn't excuse the blood on his hands, but it suggests that maybe, just maybe, the history we've been told isn't the full story. And if that's true, then the fight Luffy and his crew are caught up in now is just the latest chapter in a struggle that started long before they were born. A struggle that Rox might have been the first to fight, even if the world remembers him as a villain. The sixth theory about Rox D. Xebec takes a turn into one of the more psychological and narrative-focused ideas out there, but it's one that the more you think about it, the more it makes scary sense. The core of the theory is that Rox might not just be connected to Blackbeard in the sense of he was an idol or Blackbeard is following his legacy, but that Blackbeard could actually be the reincarnation of Rox D. Xebec, not possessed by him, not influenced by his ghost, but literally his soul reborn into a new body. Blackbeard is Rox, living his second life without consciously knowing it, or perhaps knowing it all along. This theory sounds crazy at first, but it actually ties into the central themes of One Piece better than you'd expect. Oda has always been playing with the concept of inherited will, with dreams that don't die even when the dreamer is gone. The D-Clan especially represents this idea that the flames of the will are passed down from one person to the next, generation after generation. But this theory pushes that idea a little further. What if sometimes that will isn't just inherited? What if in certain cases it's reborn directly through reincarnation? What if the strongest, most stubborn wills in the One Piece world don't just pass on their dreams? They come back themselves, reborn into new vessels, whether intentionally or as part of some deeper law of the world. The key piece of this theory is the strange body that Blackbeard has. Marco points this out directly during the Marineford War. Blackbeard's body isn't like a normal human body. It allows him to hold more than one devil fruit. That alone is already one of the biggest mysteries in the series, because Oda has made it clear through various sources that the body cannot normally contain two devil fruits. But Blackbeard pulls it off like it was part of the plan all along. Fans have been theorizing about the nature of Blackbeard's body for years. Some say it's because he's a Cerberus model Zoan user. Some say he's a triplet fused into one being, and others lean toward the idea of him having multiple souls inside him. But this reincarnation theory offers another answer. What if Blackbeard's body is weird because it's not just Blackbeard's body? What if it's the reincarnated vessel of Rox D. Xebec? Reincarnation isn't something that One Piece has talked about directly very often, but it's hinted at through the concept of inherited will. When Doflamingo talks about the throne of the world always needing someone to sit on it, when Roger speaks about Joy Boy being someone from the future who will finish what he couldn't, the idea of people being chosen or meant to fulfill certain roles in history keeps coming up. Joy Boy himself is the best example, Luffy becoming the new Joy Boy through the awakening of his fruit. But Oda leaves the idea ambiguous enough that we don't know whether Joy Boy is just a title, a role, or an actual reincarnation. So if Joy Boy can be reborn through Luffy, why couldn't Rox be reborn through Blackbeard, a first to fight, even if the world remembers him as a villain? The parallel between Joy Boy and Rox here is critical. Joy Boy represents freedom, the smile, the liberation of the world. Rox is the opposite. Domination, control, darkness. Where Joy Boy brings life, Rox represents the void. And what's Blackbeard's fruit? The Yami Yami no Mi, the darkness fruit, a Logia that represents the void itself, capable of absorbing light and other powers. Symbolically, this makes Blackbeard the perfect reincarnation of someone like Rox. The darkness fruit isn't just some random power Blackbeard stumbled into. It's the natural match for the rebirth of a man whose entire dream was to control the world under his shadow. Blackbeard's obsession with power also aligns perfectly with this idea. Most pirates in One Piece have dreams that go beyond just raw power. Luffy wants freedom. Roger wanted to see the world's secrets. Whitebeard wanted family. Even Kaido and Big Mom, as twisted as they were, had personal goals beyond just being strong. But Blackbeard, his dream is naked ambition. He wants to rise to the top at any cost. He's willing to use manipulation, betrayal, murder, and theft to get there. That's exactly the kind of ambition we'd expect from someone like Rox, whose goal was said to be world domination, not just Pirate King, king of everything. If Rox's dream was about crushing the celestial dragons and taking the throne of the world, Blackbeard's current moves align directly with continuing that same plan. Another piece of this theory that adds weight is the sheer amount of historical knowledge Blackbeard seems to have. He knows about the darkness fruit's true power, he knows how to hunt and steal devil fruits, he even seems to know about the meaning of the D in ways most characters don't. This isn't just a man who read a lot of history books. This feels like someone with insider knowledge, like someone whose past life memories might be surfacing without him fully understanding why. Or maybe he does understand. Maybe Blackbeard has known all along that he's the reincarnation of Rox, and that's why he moves through the world with so much confidence, like every step is part of a plan that's been playing out for decades. It's also interesting to consider Blackbeard's line about dreams. One of his most famous quotes is that a man's dream will never die. He says this in Jaya, and at the time it sounds like a beautiful sentiment, but if you read that line through the lens of reincarnation, it takes on a whole new meaning. It's not just about legacy, it's about the actual continuation of the dreamer through rebirth. Blackbeard might be living proof that some dreams refuse to die because the soul that carries them literally comes back. Now you might be wondering, how would reincarnation even work in the world of One Piece? There isn't a traditional reincarnation system explained in the series. No samsara, no wheel of life like in other anime. But there are a few key pieces of lore that suggest Oda might be leaving the door open for something like this. First, we know that devil fruits themselves carry some kind of essence or spirit. When a devil fruit user dies, the fruit's power reincarnates into another fruit nearby, so devil fruit powers already reincarnate. That's canon. If devil fruits can do it, why not souls? Especially powerful ones? Second, the idea of Haki is all about willpower, armament, observation, and especially Conqueror's Haki, the power to impose your will on others and on the world itself. Conqueror's Haki is often described as the power of kings, the ability to dominate not just physically, but spiritually. What if someone with a will strong enough to use Conqueror's Haki could leave an imprint so deep on the world that even death couldn't erase it? What if that will finds a way back into the world through reincarnation? Rox D. Xebec, with his monstrous ambition and Conqueror's Haki, could easily be the kind of person whose will is too stubborn to die. If this theory is true, it also explains why Blackbeard feels so fundamentally different from the other villains in the series. Doflamingo, Crocodile, Kaido, Big Mom, they all feel like products of their environment, shaped by tragedy or greed. But Blackbeard moves like someone who was born for this role, someone whose hatred and ambition are older than his own life. He doesn't just want to win, he wants to destroy the old order completely and rebuild it in his image. That's not the goal of a man who just happens to be ambitious. That's the goal of someone carrying forward a dream from the past. The symbolic connection between Blackbeard and Rox also makes sense visually and thematically. Rox Jolly Roger, from the little we've seen, resembles a dark and ominous design. Very fitting for someone tied to the theme of darkness. Blackbeard's own ship is named the Saber of Xebec. That's not subtle. You don't name your ship after a pirate from 40 years ago unless that pirate means something deeply personal to you. Most people name ships after personal symbols, people they admire, or dreams they're chasing. Blackbeard naming his ship after Rox feels almost like a declaration of identity. It also answers one of the weirdest questions about Blackbeard's rise to power. How did this nobody from Whitebeard's crew, someone who stayed in the shadows for decades, suddenly step up and start executing one of the most successful power grabs in history? Killing Thatch, stealing the Yami Yami no Mi, turning an ace to gain Shichibukai status, recruiting the worst criminals from Impel Down, snatching Whitebeard's Gura Gura no Mi. Every move was calculated, aggressive, and perfectly timed. That level of strategic brilliance doesn't feel like something Blackbeard just figured out on his own, but it makes perfect sense if he's the reincarnation of a pirate mastermind who already tried once to take the world. This reincarnation theory also makes Blackbeard's character arc much darker and more tragic. If Blackbeard is truly Rox Reborn, there's a chance that his drive toward chaos and domination isn't entirely his own. Maybe part of him doesn't even fully understand why he wants what he wants. Or maybe he does, and that makes him even more terrifying. Either way, it paints Blackbeard as the ultimate embodiment of the idea that some dreams, especially the worst ones, are too stubborn to die. At the same time, this theory raises the stakes for Luffy's journey as well, because if Luffy is Joy Boy, the reborn symbol of freedom and liberation, then Blackbeard as the reincarnation of Rox would be the perfect opposite. Not just a rival pirate, but a literal reincarnation of the world's darkest ambition. Two souls from the past, reborn in the present, clashing for the future of the world. It's the perfect narrative symmetry. In the end, whether Oda confirms reincarnation outright or keeps it symbolic, the pieces are all there. Blackbeard's obsession with rocks, his strange body, his ruthless ambition, his connection to the Darkness Fruit, and his role as the ultimate foil to Luffy. All of it adds up to a much bigger story than just power-hungry pirate wants to be king. If this theory is right, Blackbeard isn't just continuing Rox's will, he is Rox, back for round 2, ready to finish the fight he lost at God Valley. And if that's true, then the real final war of One Piece won't just be about the living, it'll be about the unresolved battles of the dead, playing out through the next generation with the future of the entire world hanging in the balance. The central idea of this theory presents something that at first glance seems far-fetched, but with the arguments presented it could make some sense. Monkey D. Dragon and Rox D. Xebec might be the same person. In other words, the mysterious leader of the Revolutionary Army, known for challenging the world government, could actually be the legendary captain of the Rox Pirates, who decades ago terrorized the seas with a feared and powerful crew. The theory is based on the idea that although these two characters appear completely different in their circumstances and goals, there is a deeper connection that could link them. On one hand, we know that Rox was an ambitious pirate who directly confronted the Celestial Dragons and the world government, which is also a defining trait of Dragon's mission in the present. On the other hand, the fact that we have never seen Rox's face opens the door to all kinds of speculation about his true identity. The intriguing point here is not just the potential connection between these two characters, but also the fact that One Piece's narrative has portrayed Dragon as someone who operates in the shadows, leading a revolutionary movement while little is known about his past. This, combined with the mystery surrounding Rox's disappearance at God Valley, creates the perfect space to consider that these two characters could be two sides of the same coin, with a drastic change in motivations and methods after that event. This premise raises important questions. What would cause someone like Rox to change course and become Dragon? What happened at God Valley that not only transformed him into a new figure, but also led him to completely conceal his previous identity? These are the mysteries that the theory seeks to explore, presenting the possibility that Dragon is the continuation of Rox, albeit with a renewed and perhaps redeemed focus. To understand why this theory holds some ground, we first need to delve into who Rox D. Xebec was, and why his figure is so significant in the world of One Piece. This character led one of the most terrifying and powerful crews in history, the Rox Pirates, a group that, to give you an idea, included titans like Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom, Shiki, and even the infamous Captain John. In other words, not only was Rox feared, but he must have possessed extraordinary charisma and power to gather and command such monstrous individuals. The Rox crew was unlike any other. These pirates were not comrades, but a group of extremely ambitious individuals who worked together because they shared common interests, primarily power and treasure. However, their reign didn't last forever. 38 years ago, in a place known as God Valley, the crew was destroyed in an epic confrontation against Gall D. Roger and Monkey D. Garp, who temporarily allied to stop them. This event marked the end of the Rox Pirates, and it is presumed that Rox himself died in the battle, along with the disappearance of the island itself. What's curious is that, despite Rox's historical importance, we have never seen his face. All we have are silhouettes or vague details, but no clear image. This detail doesn't seem accidental, as in One Piece, the mystery surrounding certain characters often serves a narrative purpose. This has led to theories like this one, suggesting that Rox's identity might have been repurposed in some way, giving rise to someone new, Monkey D. Dragon. Another key detail is that, after the fall of the Rox Pirates, the remaining members went their separate ways and became legendary figures such as emperors and great pirates. However, there is virtually no record left of Rox himself. This reinforces the idea that if he survived, he must have gone into hiding or assumed a new identity, which aligns perfectly with the narrative of this theory. In summary, Rox was such a significant and feared figure that his mysterious disappearance, along with the fact that we have never seen his face, makes him the perfect candidate for the theory that he might have adopted a new life as Dragon, a man whose ideals seem to echo the ambitions Rox might have had at his peak. The theory doesn't stop at merely proposing the idea, it also attempts to justify how it could be possible for Rox and Dragon to be the same person. One of the key points it addresses is the age difference between the two characters, which initially seems problematic. Currently, it is known that Dragon is 55 years old, while the fall of the Rox pirates occurred 38 years ago. This would mean Rox was 17 years old at the time, something that doesn't align with the idea of him leading such a powerful group of pirates at such a young age. To resolve this issue, the theory turns to Jewelry Bonnie's devil fruit, which allows her to alter a person's age. According to this hypothesis, during the battle at God Valley, Rox didn't die as believed. Instead, his age was reverted to 17 years old thanks to Bonnie's fruit, enabling him to disappear from the world government's radar. This would also explain why there is so little trace of his existence. If he was believed to be dead and physically unrecognizable, there would be no reason to continue searching for him. Another point that supports this idea is that Bonnie isn't the only user of a devil fruit with permanent age-related effects. Shinobu, for instance, has a fruit that can age objects and people irreversibly, leaving open the possibility that Rox's rejuvenation might also have been permanent. This would have given him the chance to start a new life under a different identity, that of Monkey D. Dragon. The theory also doesn't ignore the change in ideals. Rox was seen as ambitious, but his true motivations have not been revealed. The hypothesis suggests that his goals weren't as selfish as they seemed, and that he might have had intentions similar to Dragon's, overthrowing the world government and liberating the oppressed. The fall of his crew could have been the catalyst for reevaluating his approach, abandoning the pirate path to lead a global revolution under a new banner. In this context, Bonnie's devil fruit would not only explain the age discrepancy, but also serve as the starting point for Rox to transform into Dragon, the revolutionary we know today. One of the most intriguing aspects of this theory is how it addresses the relationship between Dragon and the Monkey family, particularly his connection to Garp and Luffy. In One Piece, familial relationships are often a central theme, and this hypothesis attempts to provide an explanation that, while complex, aligns with the known pieces of the puzzle so far. The theory suggests that Dragon might not actually be Garp's biological son, which would explain why they don't resemble each other physically. Instead, it proposes that Garp had a daughter, Luffy's mother, who married Dragon. According to this idea, after Garp's daughter passed away, Dragon adopted the Monkey surname as a symbolic gesture, maintaining the family lineage and carrying on the name. Another version of the theory suggests that Dragon might not even be Luffy's biological father, but rather an adoptive figure or someone who cared for him from afar. This would fit with the fact that Dragon was never present in Luffy's life, but still showed an interest in protecting him, such as when he sent Ivankov to Marineford to help save him. This type of relationship is compared to characters like Kuma and Bonnie, where there's no direct blood connection, but there is an emotional or moral bond driving their actions. These ideas also attempt to explain the physical and personality differences between Dragon and the other members of the Monkey family. On one hand, Luffy and Garp are much more extroverted and carefree, while Dragon is reserved, serious, and strategic. This reinforces the notion that Dragon might not come directly from Garp's biological line, but has taken a place within the family due to external circumstances. Finally, these theories add another layer to the mystery surrounding Dragon, a character about whom very little is known. While the theory is speculative, it offers a possible reason for Dragon's distance from the Monkey family and his almost obsessive focus on the revolution, a complex past as Rox, and the need to protect Luffy from the consequences of his actions. This, at the very least, would justify why Garp and Dragon appear to have a distant relationship and why Dragon has remained on the sidelines, both in his son's life and in his supposed father's. As with any theory, criticisms and doubts are inevitable, and this one is no exception. While the idea that Dragon and Rox D. Xebec are the same person has some intriguing aspects, it also faces significant issues that are hard to overlook. Two of the most questioned points are the temporal inconsistencies and the family relationships. The first major obstacle is the issue of age. Although the theory attempts to justify Rox's rejuvenation through Jewelry Bonnie's devil fruit, this remains speculative. So far, it hasn't been confirmed in One Piece that the effects of her fruit can be permanent, especially when applied to someone else. Moreover, while the manga has shown other cases of abilities that alter age, such as Shinobu's fruit, it's unclear if these properties work similarly, leaving an important logical gap in this hypothesis. On the other hand, the mystery surrounding Dragon's family also raises unanswered questions. For instance, if Dragon isn't Garp's biological son, why would he carry his surname? And if he isn't Luffy's real father, how can his interest in protecting him be justified beyond a simple symbolic or moral bond? These narrative gaps are points that the theory tries to address, but doesn't manage to resolve convincingly, leaving room for its viability to be questioned. Another detail that complicates accepting this idea is Rox's character and ideals, which have been presented as ambitious and willing to work with extremely dangerous individuals to achieve his goals. Although the theory suggests that Rox might have had a more altruistic background, this seems to contradict the image the manga has built so far. Rox's transformation into dragon would require not only a physical change, but also a radical personal evolution, something that, while possible, would be difficult to justify without resorting to forced explanations. Finally, the fact that Eiichiro Oda has never shown Rox's face or delved deeply into Dragon's past might simply be a narrative choice to maintain the mystery, without any direct connection between them. While the lack of details fuels theories like this, it could also mean that both stories are intended to develop independently. In conclusion, although the theory offers creative solutions to these inconsistencies, many of them feel too speculative and rely on assumptions that haven't been confirmed in the story. This doesn't completely invalidate the theory, but it does cast doubt on its viability within the One Piece canon. Honestly, this theory feels like a bit of a roller coaster to me. When I first heard it, I thought, wait, could this actually happen? The idea that Dragon and Rox might be the same person is definitely intriguing and even exciting, but I can't help but notice some issues that make me doubt it's something Oda would really do. On one hand, I can't deny that connecting two such mysterious characters has its appeal, thinking that someone like Rox, who led such a feared group of pirates, could have completely changed his life and become the revolutionary dragon is the kind of plot twist that would break the internet. Plus, the fact that we've never seen Rox's face and that Dragon's backstory is so unexplored makes the pieces seem to fit, at least on a surface level. It's one of those moments where you think, maybe there's something there. However, being realistic, I feel like there are too many things that don't quite add up. For example, the idea of rejuvenation with Bonnie's fruit feels a bit too forced. Sure, in the world of One Piece, anything is possible, but it's hard for me to imagine Oda using something so specific to justify this connection. And if Rox really did have ideals so similar to dragons, why would he have associated with such ruthless pirates like Big Mom or Kaido? That part always leaves me scratching my head. Then there's the family aspect. To me, one of the most important elements in One Piece is how relationships between characters are handled, especially family bonds. If Dragon isn't really Garp's son, or if his connection to Luffy is more symbolic than biological, wouldn't that have been hinted at more clearly by now? I'm not saying it's impossible, but it feels like a big departure from what the manga has shown us so far. Despite all this, I have to admit I love the idea of Oda surprising us with something like this. I can already imagine the uproar in the community if it turns out that Dragon and Rox are the same person. It would be insane. Even though I personally don't think it's something that will happen, I wouldn't mind at all if Oda decided to include this twist, as long as it's done in a way that doesn't feel forced or like a cheap plot device. In conclusion, I think this theory is more of a fun exercise for fans than something that's actually going to happen in the story. But hey, with Oda, you never know. For now, I'm choosing to stay skeptical, but open to being surprised. Who knows? Maybe we're closer to a giant revelation than we think. Look, to be honest, after going through the entire theory, I'm torn. On one hand, I can't deny that it has some interesting points, but on the other, it feels like there are way too many loose ends. Now, if we're talking about the actual likelihood of this happening in One Piece, I'd say it's pretty low. But then again, we're talking about Eiichiro Oda, and he's capable of surprising us in ways no one expects. The first thing that comes to mind is that, for this theory to work, Oda would have to weave everything together with surgical precision. Connecting Rox and Dragon as the same person would mean rewriting a significant part of One Piece's history, not just the events at God Valley, but also how the characters have been portrayed up until now. Honestly, I'm not sure if it'd be worth complicating things that much when the story is already rich and compelling on its own. Also, when I think about it logically, Dragon has all the potential to be an incredible character without needing to be the rejuvenated version of Rox. He's a revolutionary leader, someone who challenges the world government and has built a movement capable of changing the world. That alone makes him fascinating enough without adding such a convoluted connection to Rox. For me, it would be far more impactful to see how Oda develops his story independently, diving into his relationships with Luffy, Garp, and the Revolutionary Army. That said, I I won't lie. If Oda decided this theory was true, it would be a massive shock. Imagine the fan reaction to discovering that Dragon has been rocks all along. It would be one of those jaw-dropping moments that everyone talks about for weeks, but it would have to be executed perfectly, because otherwise, it could feel like an unnecessary twist or a cheap way to surprise the audience. In the end, while I'd love to see Oda pull off something like this, I still think it's unlikely. This theory has intriguing ideas, but it also leans heavily on speculation and tying together loose ends that maybe don't need to be tied. Personally, I'd rather enjoy the mystery surrounding Dragon and Rocks as separate characters, but hey, if this turns out to be true, I'm not going to complain. On the contrary, I'll be there enjoying the chaos this would cause in the community. Who knows what else Oda has up his sleeve? 50 theories about the final war in One Piece. 1. They win the final war and then go for the One Piece. Alright, picture this. The Straw Hats and their massive alliance take down the world government in an all-out final war. It's chaos, it's legendary, it shakes the entire planet, and after all the dust settles, after Imu's mysterious throne is shattered and the celestial dragons are history, there's this eerie silence. Everyone expects Luffy to go straight for the One Piece, but he hasn't yet. Why? Because maybe the war had to come first. See, what if the final war isn't just about freedom, it's about clearing the path to reach the One Piece properly. Maybe the world government has always been guarding the entrance to Laugh Tale or blocking access to the last Poneglyph. They're not just the villains of the world, they're also the final obstacle between Luffy and that legendary treasure. And after the victory, there's this huge moment. The seas are united, ancient secrets are out, people are free. Now finally, Luffy can go to the last island not because he wants to, but because he has to. The world is watching, the adventure isn't over, it's just changed. Going to the One Piece now means discovering the true history and doing something with it. Maybe it's not just a treasure, maybe it's a final choice, a gift from Joy Boy. So yeah, this theory flips the usual order. It's not find the treasure then fight the bosses. It's defeat the evil then uncover the truth. It gives the final war weight, makes it feel like the price to pay before the real ending, the discovery of One Piece itself. 2. They fight the final war to save the world, but give up the One Piece now this one. Painful, tragic, but beautiful in its own way. Imagine Luffy and the crew almost reaching Laugh Tale. They're right there, at the edge of the world, the One Piece within reach. But then, the sky darkens. A global threat looms. Maybe a weapon. Maybe a force of nature set off by the world government. Maybe even something like a dying Zunisha or the Red Line crumbling. The world's literally falling apart. And in that moment, the Straw Hats make a choice. They turn away from the One Piece to save everyone else. Because here's the thing, this isn't about greed or fame. Luffy's never been that kind of pirate. He wants freedom, he wants his friends safe, and he wants to laugh at the end. If claiming the One Piece means dooming the world, or letting the world government win by doing nothing, then Luffy would totally say, screw the treasure, let's go save people. Imagine how emotional that would be. The treasure is right there, and yet they sail away from it. Maybe Robin cries, maybe even Usopp hesitates, but they all follow Luffy because they've already found something greater than gold, each other, and the will to fight for the world. And maybe, just maybe, the One Piece was never meant to be taken anyway. Maybe it's a metaphor, or maybe Joy Boy left it there as a reward only for those who could walk away when the world needed them most. Heartbreaking? Absolutely. But if Oda wanted to hit us in the feels while still giving a legendary ending, this route would hurt in the best way. 3. They reach the One Piece before the final war. Okay, now flip the script again. What if they actually find the One Piece before the final war even starts? Imagine this. The Straw Hats do it. They beat the last roadblock, follow the Poneglyphs, and reach Laugh Tale. They discover the One Piece. And it's not just gold or weapons, it's the truth. The full story of the Void Century, of Joy Boy, of the Ancient Kingdom. A message from the past meant for the one who can unite the world. And here's where it gets spicy. The moment Luffy and Co learn the truth, they become a threat on a whole different level. Not because of their strength, but because of what they now know. The world government freaks the hell out. Imu and the Gorosei activate Plan Omega. Buster calls, ancient weapons, clones. Everything gets thrown into motion. Not to stop Luffy from becoming Pirate King, but to stop the world from hearing the truth. So the final war begins not over a throne, but over knowledge. The One Piece doesn't end the story, it triggers the end game. The Straw Hats return from Laugh Tale with proof of the world's biggest lie. And now, they're not just pirates, they're revolutionaries, truth tellers, the spark that lights the final fire. It's like finding the answer to a riddle, and then realizing you still have to survive the monster guarding it. It's tense, it's massive, and it gives Laugh Tale real narrative weight, not as a destination, but as the catalyst. 4. Imu is the final villain. Let's be real, Imu gives off major final boss energy. Mysterious, silent, shadowy ruler who sits on the supposed empty throne? Yeah, that's textbook I'm actually the god of this world vibes. If Imu ends up being the final villain, it makes perfect sense. He, or they, has likely been pulling strings behind the world government for centuries. Not just hiding, but actively erasing history, deciding which kingdoms get wiped out, hi Lulusia, and maintaining control through fear and misinformation. Now imagine the final war. Luffy and Co have torn through the Marines, the Celestial Dragons are powerless, the Gorosei are panicking, and then Imu steps out of the shadows, and what we thought was a political conflict becomes something mythical. Imu isn't just powerful, maybe he's immortal, maybe he was around during the Void Century, maybe he's Joy Boy's rival, maybe he's the reason the Ancient Kingdom fell. And of course, Luffy doesn't care who he is, he just wants to punch him in the face. This would be epic because it makes the world government not just corrupt, but cosmically evil. Imu could be the embodiment of control, of stagnation, the anti-Luffy. No freedom, no laughter, no adventure, just eternal order. The fight between Luffy and Imu wouldn't just be physical, it'd be ideological, the spirit of adventure versus the fear of change. And when Luffy wins, because come on, you know he will, it'd be the ultimate victory, not just for him, but for the world. 5. Blackbeard is the final villain. Okay, now this is the fan favorite pick, and for damn good reason. Blackbeard has been Luffy's foil since day one. Where Luffy seeks freedom, Teach chases power. Where Luffy values his crew, Teach treats people like tools. And while Luffy's joy is infectious, Blackbeard's presence is corruptive. He's what Luffy could have been if he went down the wrong path. So what if Teach isn't just a villain? What if he's the last one? This theory has juice. Maybe Luffy defeats the world government, the truth gets revealed, the seas are free, and then Blackbeard shows up. Maybe he's stolen another ancient weapon. Maybe he's found a way to merge even more devil fruits. Or maybe he waited till the world was weakened, then strikes. Final boss Blackbeard would be wild. Not only is he ridiculously strong, he's unpredictable, cunning, nasty. He's not fighting for ideals, he's fighting to take everything. Pirate King, ruler of the world, godlike power, and that makes him terrifying. And narratively, it's perfect. The world is free, but now it has to stay free. Teach becomes the final test, not of strength, but of will. Luffy has to fight the one person who represents the complete opposite of what the Straw Hats believe in. And when Luffy beats him, oh man, it won't just be a win for the crew, it'll be a win for every dreamer, every freedom lover, every misfit in the One Piece world. 6. They lose the final war and the world government wins. Now this would be dark. We're so used to thinking Luffy's crew will win, beat the odds, and sail into the sunset. But what if they don't? What if the final war ends in defeat? Picture it. The Straw Hats give it everything they've got. The revolutionaries rise, kingdoms rebel, pirates unite, but the world government, with Imu at the helm, and who knows what ancient weapons or secret powers, still wins. Maybe they've cloned Joy Boy, maybe they unlock a new god-level devil fruit, or maybe they just fight dirtier than anyone else and pull out a last-second nuke from Lulusia 2.0. Now imagine what this does to the world. Luffy, captured or presumed dead. Robin, in chains again. Revolutionary Army, destroyed. And the message is clear. No one escapes the system. That ending would hit like Marineford times 10. And honestly, it'd be legendary because it flips everything. It'd echo stories like Star Wars or Attack on Titan, where the first ending is pain, so that the real freedom comes later. Maybe a time skip follows. Maybe the next generation, like Uta, Momo, or even the kids of the Straw Hats, take the fight back. Or maybe the world gets so broken that something new is born from the ashes. It's painful, it's brutal, but damn, it'd make the eventual comeback unforgettable. 7. They break the red line and unite all seas. Now this one? Straight out of Endgame material. Imagine the war reaches its peak, and instead of just taking out the Celestial Dragons or toppling Marie Joie, the Straw Hats go full apocalypse mode. They destroy the freaking red line. Why? Well, think about it. The red line splits the entire world. It keeps people divided. It makes travel a nightmare. And it's literally the reason why the 4 seas, East Blue, West Blue, North Blue, South Blue, can't mix freely. It's the foundation of the current world order. So breaking the red line isn't just about geography, it's about freedom. Maybe it happens with Uranus, the last ancient weapon, or maybe Luffy awakens some crazy Gear 6 ability and punches a hole through it. Because of course he would. Either way, the seas flood into one another. Reverse Mountain crumbles, Fishman Island gets freed from the bottom of the ocean, and boom, the Grand Line is gone. Suddenly it's one sea, no borders, no limits, just freedom. This moment would be so symbolic. It's Joy Boy's dream realized. It's the ancient kingdom's will coming back to life. And narratively, it feels like the world finally resetting, like we're going back to the beginning, but better. Plus, imagine the reactions. Islands shifting, entire climates changing, sea kings everywhere, pandemonium, and through it all, Luffy standing there, laughing, going, "This is what I wanted." Insane, epic, pure One Piece. 8. The One Piece is actually an ancient weapon meant for the final war. Let's go full sci-fi mode with this one. What if the One Piece, yes, the treasure that's been hyped for over 25 years, isn't just symbolic or comedic or even knowledge, but a damn weapon? An ancient weapon, to be exact. Maybe it's Uranus, the missing one, or maybe it's something beyond the 3 we know. Either way, the idea is that Joy Boy didn't just leave behind a message or a laugh. He left behind the means to fight back. Imagine the Straw Hats reaching Laugh Tale, uncovering the One Piece, and finding a massive ship, a sentient being, or a planet-destroying device, something that only Luffy can activate. Not because he's chosen, but because of who he is, his will, his fruit, his joy. Now picture the world government freaking out. They found it, they have it. Suddenly the Straw Hats aren't just rebels, they're gods of war. But here's the twist, maybe using it has consequences. Maybe it risks destroying entire islands. Maybe it echoes the mistakes of the Void Century. So now it's not just, we have the weapon, it's, should we use it? This adds a whole new layer to the final arc. Strategy, morality, sacrifice. If Luffy does it, it's not for power, it's to protect others. If Teach gets it, game over. Turning the One Piece into a weapon would silence everyone who ever doubted its worth and make the final war a cosmic level showdown. 9. Luffy dies pain. Absolute pain, but also kind of fitting. Luffy dying at the end of One Piece would break every heart across the fandom, but it could also be the most perfect way to end his story. Why? Because Luffy's not the kind of guy who grows old. He's a force of nature. He lives fast, laughs loud, and runs headfirst into danger. He's literally burning his life away with Gear 2nd. He's made deals with death. Remember Ivankov saving him? And Gear 5th. That's not just cartoon physics. It's reality breaking. It's Joy Boy's will in motion. That can't last forever. So what if Luffy gives everything in the final war, he burns out saving the world, he smiles in his last moment, and he dies with a laugh? Heartbreaking? Hell yes, but beautiful too, because that's what the Pirate King should be. Someone who gives everything for freedom, even his life. Imagine the world afterward. Statues of Luffy, kids playing pirate with straw hats. Former enemies telling stories about the man who smiled at the end. And maybe, just maybe, he leaves behind something bigger than himself. A legacy. A world where no kid gets crushed by a celestial dragon. A world where you can dream. It's sad, but it's real. And if done right, it would be the single most emotional ending in anime history. 10. Nobody dies, not even the villains. Now for the polar opposite of the last theory. What if no one dies in the final war? Not a single Straw Hat, not a single villain. Everyone makes it out alive somehow. Sounds weird, right? But think about Oda. He's been surprisingly kind to his characters. Yeah, Ace died. Yeah, Whitebeard too, but for a war as massive as Marineford, most people walked away. So what if the final war goes all out, but ends with redemption, not death? Maybe Luffy defeats Imu but refuses to kill. Maybe Akainu sees the truth and backs down. Maybe even Blackbeard gets spared. Not forgiven, but left alive. And the Straw Hats, they survive. All of them. Because their bond, their friendship, their growth, It's too strong. It'd be controversial, sure. People want stakes. People want blood. But imagine the message. You don't have to die to change the world. You can win without revenge. You can fight for something without becoming a monster. In a story all about inherited will and changing the future, that might actually hit harder than any death ever could. It'd be risky, but it'd be pure One Piece. 11. There will be clones of Ace, Whitebeard, Roger, or someone like that, okay? This one is pure sci-fi insanity, and I love it. You know how Egghead has introduced some next level tech? Clones, Seraphim, artificial devil fruits, even memory transfer? Now imagine the world government taking it a step further and pulling a Jurassic Park, but with pirate legends. Clones of Ace, of Whitebeard, of Roger, yeah, the ultimate fan service and nightmare fuel. Let's be real, the government would totally do it. They've already got King's Lunarian DNA, they've got Vegapunk's legacy tech, and they're desperate. So imagine they create a squad of clone warriors based on legendary pirates. Maybe soulless, maybe modified. Ace's fire, Whitebeard's strength, Roger's conqueror's haki, all recreated in artificial bodies with zero morals. Cold, obedient, devastating. Now picture Luffy facing a fake Ace on the battlefield. A fake Ace, emotionally brutal. It'd shake him to the core. Maybe the clone even remembers pieces of Ace's past thanks to memory programming. Maybe Sabo sees it and loses it. Maybe Jinbei hesitates because Whitebeard's clone walks toward him with that same fatherly aura. This twist would be brutal. It'd show how low the world government will go. It'd force the Straw Hats and us to face the legacy of death in the most twisted way possible. And thematically, it's a perfect contrast. The Straw Hats fight with heart. The clones fight with code. It's will versus imitation. And of course, it'd give Oda a way to draw Roger in combat again. Let's not pretend he wouldn't love that. 12th, a Straw Hat will die now. This one? Painful as hell. Nobody wants it, but everybody's scared it might happen. Losing a Straw Hat in the final war would be the biggest emotional nuke Oda could drop, and narratively it makes sense. The stakes are higher than ever. If the crew walks out of the ultimate world-ending battle with 0 casualties, it might feel cheap to some fans. So who could it be? Usopp, the coward turned hero, going out in a blaze of glory. Zoro, fulfilling a promise by sacrificing himself for Luffy one last time. Sanji, taking the blow meant for someone else with a final smile. Robin, the one with the key to the truth, dying to pass it on. It'd wreck us. But here's why it would be powerful, because the Straw Hats are a family, and when families lose someone, it changes them forever, but it also proves how strong their bond is, and maybe, just maybe, it's what sparks the final push. Like Ace's death at Marineford made Luffy awaken, maybe a Straw Hat sacrifice unlocks something greater, not just a new power-up, but a new understanding of what they're fighting for. It'd be heartbreaking, but unforgettable. 13. Luffy will kill the final villain, no matter who it is. Now this is wild because Luffy doesn't kill. It's one of his defining traits. He beats the crap out of his enemies, breaks their pride, tears down their empires, but he never takes their life. So imagine what would push Luffy to finally cross that line. Maybe it's Imu, maybe it's Blackbeard, maybe it's someone new, but whoever it is, they're so dangerous, so monstrous, that Luffy knows if they live, the world stays broken. Now think about that moment. Luffy, battered, bleeding, standing over his defeated enemy. They've been stripped of their powers, exposed to the world, and still they laugh. They promise they'll rise again, and Luffy just stares. No. He says, "Not this time," and he does it. This would be huge because it's a complete break from Luffy's norm, but also a moment of maturity. He's not doing it out of hate. He's doing it because he finally understands. Some threats can't be left alive, not if the next generation is gonna have peace. It'd be controversial, emotional, and it would redefine who Luffy is. Not a murderer, not a hero, but a man who makes the hardest choice just once. And after that, he walks away from being Pirate King because he knows that's the price. Oof, that one hurts. 14. Dragon will die. This one's got classic storytelling energy. Luffy's dad, Dragon, the most wanted man in the world, leader of the Revolutionary Army. He's been in the shadows for ages, but if he steps out in the final war fully active, it feels like a death flag gets planted immediately. Dragon dying would serve a massive emotional and narrative purpose. First, it gives Luffy a deeper personal stake in the war. He's never been super close to Dragon, but imagine them finally meeting, fighting side by side, and then losing him. Second, it passes the revolutionary flag flame to Sabo. Sabo's already being groomed as the next leader. Dragon dying would make that torch official. Third, it raises the stakes. The final war needs heavy losses to feel real, and Dragon's death would hit both the revolutionary side and the Straw Hats. Now, how would he die? Sacrifice? Fighting Emu? Holding off a buster call so the others can escape? Or maybe he gets betrayed, and it's even worse. But here's the twist. Dragon dying isn't just a tragedy, it's also a symbol that even the strongest rebel can fall, but his will lives on in Luffy, in Sabo, in the New World. Tragic, inevitable, iconic. 15. The Revolutionary Army will finally act in the final war. This one feels almost guaranteed, but still super hype. The Revolutionary Army has been in the background for ages, building forces, gathering intel, exposing corruption, but in the final war, no more hiding. They show up and they go off. Imagine armies of revolutionaries from across the world rising up at once, leaders from every blue, former slaves, fallen kings, angry scholars, CP agents who defect, led by Dragon, Sabo, Ivankov, Karasu, Morley, all the weirdos. Their mission, take out the Celestial Dragons, burn Marijois to the ground, reveal the truth. And here's the best part. This war isn't just about pirates anymore. It's about everyone. It's global, the people versus the system. And the revolutionaries are the spark. They fight the Gorosei, they hold off Saturn, they clash with CP0, and in the chaos, they make sure the truth gets out. For years, they've prepared in silence. Now, they scream, and when they do, the whole world watches. 16th, Impel Down will be liberated during the final war, unleashing total chaos. Alright, buckle up, because this one would be pure madness. Imagine the final war reaching such insane levels of global chaos that one of the most heavily fortified places in the world, Impel Down, gets cracked wide open. But this time, it's not just Luffy busting in to save Ace. This time, it's a full-on revolutionary prison break, and the goal is to free the worst of the worst. Prisoners that have been buried in level 6 for decades. Monsters that make Doflamingo look like a choir boy. Maybe even people from the Void Century who've somehow survived. Who knows? And once the gates are down, all hell breaks loose. It'd be absolute narrative genius because it turns the final war into a three-way brawl. The Straw Hat Alliance, the world government, and now this wildcard horde of unleashed nightmares. Some might side with Luffy, some might side with Teach, some might just want to watch the world burn. We could see the return of Bon Clay, Daz Bones, and maybe even Enel shows up from somewhere with an army of sky people like, what the hell did I miss? It adds unpredictability, it adds chaos, it adds tension, because suddenly the battlefield isn't just about good versus evil, it's about trying to control the uncontrollable. And narratively, it gives us closure. Impel Down is one of the darkest places in the One Piece world. Freeing it is symbolic. It means breaking the system completely. It means no more torture, no more silence. Even the prisoners have a role to play in the new world. 17th, Kaido and Big Mom return for the final war. Oh boy, this would be insane. Everyone thought Kaido and Big Mom were done after Wano, right? Smashed by Luffy and Law Kid, dropped into a magma pit like yesterday's leftovers. But come on, this is One Piece. Nobody that important dies off screen. So what if they come back? Maybe Vegapunk's tech revives them. Maybe they fuse together into some hideous hybrid magma monster. Terrifying. Or maybe Emu had them extracted from the earth, cloned them, enhanced them, and now they're back for revenge. Imagine it, the final war's at full tilt and suddenly the ground shakes. A massive shadow rises from the sea. It's Kaido, holding his Kanabo, laughing, "Miss me?" Then Big Mom floats in on a fire cloud, screaming for her children, lightning everywhere. This wouldn't just be fan service, it'd be legitimately horrifying. These two were Yonko for a reason. Their return would up the stakes immediately, and maybe they don't even fight for the same side. Maybe Kaido wants to finish his war dream. Maybe Big Mom just wants to destroy the government for screwing with her lineage. Or maybe they just want revenge on Luffy. Either way, they are wild cards, and their return would set the battlefield on fire. Because if they're back, nobody's safe, not even Teach. 18. All the ancient weapons will be used in the final war. Let's go big. Let's go biblical. We've spent decades hearing about the ancient weapons. Pluton, Poseidon, Uranus, heinous, but barely seen them in action. The final war is where that changes. All of them, fully unleashed. Poseidon? We already know it's Shirahoshi, so imagine her commanding the Sea Kings in a war. Massive serpents tearing through battleships, swallowing fleets whole. Pluton? It's said to be a battleship that can destroy islands. If it's real, and Wano is hiding it, then we're talking Death Star level destruction. And it's in Luffy's hands. Then there's Uranus. The big mystery. Maybe it's tied to the sky, or Imu, or Enel. Maybe it's a weapon that controls weather or gravity itself. Whatever it is, once it's awakened, it's gonna change everything. Now, imagine all three activated at once. A giant storm cloud covering the earth, Sea Kings rising from the depths, Pluton firing from the shoreline. The world itself crumbles under the sheer power of these ancient beasts. It's not a war anymore. It's the end of an era. And who uses them? That's the key. If Luffy uses them, it's out of necessity to protect. If Imu does, it's domination. If Blackbeard gets his hands on one, good luck. This theory turns the final battle into a full-scale mythological apocalypse, and we're so here for it. 19. The final war will make Marineford look cute. You remember how epic Marineford was, right? It felt like the biggest war in anime at the time. Whitebeard, admirals, warlords, Luffy, Ace. Just absolute chaos. But compared to what's coming, Marineford is just the trailer. The final war will be on a planetary scale. Pirate alliances, revolutionary armies, celestial dragon war machines, ancient weapons, sea kings, seraphim, clones, you name it. We're talking multiple fronts, sky, sea, and land. Maybe even underwater battles with fishmen and sea kings. Zoro dueling Mihawk, Akainu clashing with Dragon, Shanks facing Blackbeard, hundreds of matchups, all legendary. And it's not just scale, it's emotion. Every fight will mean something. Every victory will cost. Every loss will shake us. Oda will break us, and we'll love him for it. This is the moment One Piece has been building to for 25 plus years. And when it happens, Marineford won't even be in the top 5 anymore. 20. Shanks participates and dies. This one will shatter the fandom. Shanks has always been the mysterious, cool, older brother of the pirate world. Always watching, always planning. So when he finally steps in during the final war, it's going to feel monumental, like the gods themselves have entered the battlefield. But what if he dies? Not just dies, goes out like a legend, maybe protecting Luffy, maybe fighting Blackbeard, maybe holding off Imu long enough for the truth to get out. His death would be devastating, but also meaningful, because he's not just a fighter, he's a symbol of inherited will, of Roger's legacy, of hope. And maybe that's the point. Shanks dying is the final push Luffy needs. It's the passing of the torch, the last anchor of the old era falling, so the new one can truly begin. Painful, poetic, perfect. 21. Blackbeard shows up after the fall of the world government and is the real final boss. Now this is straight up genius level villainy. Everyone's locked into the idea that Blackbeard is one of the big bads, sure. But what if he's not the main threat during the war, but shows up after it? Imagine this. Luffy, the revolutionaries, and their allies actually win. The world government is in ruins. Marijois is dust. Imu is gone or missing. Everyone's celebrating. The world is starting to heal. And then a massive shadow rises over the horizon. It's Teach. He's been waiting. While everyone else was busy bleeding in battle and tearing the world apart, Blackbeard was just watching, waiting for the perfect time to move in. Maybe he let the war play out knowing it would leave everyone weak. Maybe he already stole something insane, like Uranus, or Imu's immortality secret, and now that the throne is empty, he wants it. Cue the real final arc, the last clash, Luffy versus Blackbeard. The free world versus the embodiment of chaos. This version of Teach isn't just a pirate, he's a tyrant in the making. He doesn't believe in freedom, he believes in control, disguised as freedom. Anyone can rule, he says. So why not me? It'd be poetic. The fake D versus the true D. The man who betrayed everything versus the man who lived for his friends. This would be the real final test of Luffy's ideals. And when he wins, that's when he really becomes Pirate King. Not by claiming a treasure, but by stopping the worst possible future. 22. The government creates a Joy Boy clone using the Straw Hat's DNA. Alright, this one's straight up mad scientist horror show material. We know the world government has been guarding that massive Straw Hat in Marie-Joie for something, right? And we also know they're doing freaky things with DNA, cloning, and celestial secrets. So what if, just what if, they create a Joy Boy clone using ancient bloodline tech and the Straw Hat's DNA? They want to control Joy Boy's power, not stop him, own him. Imagine they take samples from Luffy during a capture, or maybe they've been storing bloodlines for centuries. Then they combine it with that Straw Hat relic and boom, Project Joy Boy.X is born. What comes out? A perfect looking clone. Maybe he even has Gear 5. Maybe he thinks he's Luffy, but he's not. He's a weapon, cold, empty, everything the real Joy Boy wasn't. Now here's the twist. This clone is sent into the battlefield to fight Luffy, or maybe even the people of the world. He becomes a symbol of fear. The message? This is Joy Boy when he serves us. But that's where the real Luffy draws the line. Imagine the final clash. Luffy versus Joy Boy, past versus future, heart versus programming. And when Luffy wins, it proves once and for all that being Joy Boy isn't about power or blood, it's about spirit. Chills. 23. The Lulusia weapon destroys part of Luffy's alliance. This one's pure devastation. We saw what the Lulusia weapon can do. It erased a country from existence. No buildup, no escape, just gone. So now the question is, what happens when that power gets aimed at Luffy's own people? Imagine this. The final war is heating up. The alliance is split across different fronts. Revolutionaries on one side, pirate fleets on another, maybe the fishmen fighting near Red Line. And suddenly, boom! The sky changes. That same black cloud, the same insane light, and then one of their territories, maybe Kamabaka Kingdom, or one of the revolutionary bases is completely wiped off the map. No warning, no defense, and the world government laughs. The horror hits hard. These aren't just random islands anymore. These are people we know, characters we love. Gone. It'd shake Luffy. It'd make Dragon go full wrath mode. It might even break someone like Sabo for a while. Narratively, it does two things. It reminds us the government is still terrifying, even in its last breath. It raises the emotional stakes to 1000. After that, the Alliance doesn't just want justice. They want revenge. And the viewers? We're all in. 24. A totally new villain appears. Someone we've never seen before. You know how Naruto introduced Kagaya out of nowhere at the end? What if Oda pulls a similar move but actually nails it? Imagine the final war is in full swing. Imu has fallen, Teach is on the run, and just when we think the story's wrapping up, something ancient awakens, something older than the Void Century, a being, a will, a race, something completely new. Maybe it's tied to the D lineage, maybe it's the original enemy of Joy Boy, or maybe it's a celestial godlike figure that's been sleeping beneath Marie-Joie this entire time. This enemy isn't political. It's not about control. It's about cosmic balance. And the fact that the world has changed too much, has gone too far toward freedom, means it must be reset. And suddenly the Straw Hats aren't just pirates anymore. They're defenders of the new age. Luffy becomes a literal guardian of humanity's future. It'd be bold, risky, but if anyone can make a final surprise boss work, it's Oda. And you know he'd go full mythology with it. 25th Marie-Joie is destroyed. Oh yeah, this one's gonna be beautifully satisfying. The celestial dragons, the Gorosei, the thrones, the slavery, the secrets, it all comes crashing down, literally. Marie-Joie, the most disgusting symbol of inequality and oppression in the world, gets obliterated. Maybe by Pluton, maybe by Shirahoshi commanding Sea Kings, maybe Dragon sacrifices himself and brings the whole thing down in one last act of rebellion. Either way, it's gone. Flattened. No more Holy Land, no more throne, just rubble. The people of the world cheer, former slaves cry, kings fall to their knees. It's the end of an era, the real start of a new world. And you just know the soundtrack during that scene is gonna go nuts. 26. Luffy gets captured. Oh man, this would flip everything. Imagine the unthinkable. Luffy, our sunshine, our future pirate king, the man who broke into Enies lobby, Marineford, and Impel Down, gets captured in the final war. How? Maybe it's a desperate act. Maybe the world government unleashes a trap while he's weakened from fighting Imu or Blackbeard. Maybe it's a betrayal, or maybe it's strategic. They know they can't kill him, but if they lock him away, they can kill his legacy. And the world watches watches. Suddenly, everything shifts. The Straw Hats are in panic mode. Sabo and Dragon are going berserk. The Revolutionary Army, furious. The people, screaming. Because capturing Luffy isn't just about him, it's about hope. This would echo the Ace storyline, but this time, it's way worse. Luffy's the leader, the icon, the symbol of freedom. His imprisonment would break the morale of the Alliance, or ignite a rescue mission so massive it puts Marineford to shame. Maybe they put him in a new Impel Down. Maybe they chain him with Seastone tech developed by Vegapunk. But you know what's coming. The Great Straw Hat break-in. Zoro, Sanji, Jinbei, and the rest tearing through everything. Usopp crying but fighting. Robin tracking ancient paths to get there. And at the end, Luffy smiling in chains. Sorry I made you wait. Boom. Hype. Tears. War. 27. Robin gets captured. This one hurts on a different level. Robin's always been the target. Since she was a child, the world has wanted her dead or imprisoned because of what she knows. And in the final war, that danger is multiplied 1,000 times. If Robin gets captured, it's not just about revenge or leverage. It's about erasing the truth. She's the only one who can read the poneglyphs. She's the only link to the Void Century that matters. So imagine this. During a chaotic battle, CP0 swoops in and vanishes with her. Maybe Saturn himself captures her. Maybe she sacrifices herself to buy time for the others. Either way, she's gone. The crew is devastated. Luffy's furious. Sanji's in full rage mode. Frankie's ready to build a missile, and the world watches in horror, knowing that if Robin disappears, so does the truth. But here's the twist. Robin, she's not a damsel, she's deadly. She doesn't just sit in a cell and cry. She outsmarts her captors. She reads secret files. She sends hidden messages. She prepares the final bombshell to be delivered to the world, even if it's with her last breath. A Robin rescue arc in the final war wouldn't just be epic, it'd be the heart of the story. Truth, sacrifice, memory, everything she's fought for, coming full circle. 28th, Sabo gets captured. Man, the Revolutionary Trio really be suffering. Sabo getting captured during the final war would be a brutal narrative blow. He's already been targeted during the Reverie, already missing, already had the world thinking he was dead. So if the government actually gets him during the final war, it'd be catastrophic. Sabo isn't just strong, he's a symbol. He's the Flame Emperor. He's Ace's brother. He's Dragon's successor. His capture would be a political earthquake. Now imagine the Marines publicly broadcasting it. Sabo is ours. Boom, panic, protests. The Revolutionary Army is enraged. Luffy, barely holding himself back. And if Imu or the Gorosei interrogate him, trying to extract ancient info or even erase his memories. We're entering real dark territory, but Sabo's no pushover. He's been tortured before, he's lost family, he's literally walked through hell and come out stronger. So maybe he doesn't break, maybe he uses the opportunity to destroy something from within, classic Sabo, or maybe his capture becomes the catalyst for Dragon to go all in. No more patience, no more strategy, just pure war. Either way, if Sabo's taken, someone's dying to get him back. 29, the treasure in Mary Joie is a devil fruit of ultimate power. Oda teased it so hard. Doflamingo said there's a national treasure in Mary Joie that could shake the world if exposed. So what if that treasure is a devil fruit? But not just any fruit, the ultimate devil fruit. Maybe it's the original one. Maybe it grants god tier abilities, reality warping, immortality, time manipulation. Or maybe it's the mother fruit, the source of all devil fruits. Something Vegapunk theorized about, something even the Gorosei fear. Now imagine the government has kept it hidden, never eaten, because the risk was too high. But in the final war, with everything collapsing, they finally use it. Maybe Saturn eats it, maybe Imu, maybe they inject it into one of the Seraphim or a Joy Boy clone. Suddenly the battlefield changes. Now it's not about armies, it's about surviving a god. And maybe Luffy has to go full gear 5, awakening levels we haven't even seen yet to counter it. Or maybe someone else ends up eating the fruit, someone unexpected, like Buggy. Please, God, no. Either way, this treasure becomes the final twist, the ace up the government's sleeve, and it pushes the final battle to a level we haven't even dreamed of. 30. The treasure in Mary Joie is the key to the ancient kingdom. Now let's flip theory 29 on its head. What if the treasure in Mary Joie isn't a weapon, but a relic, a key, something that unlocks the truth about the Void Century, the ancient kingdom, and maybe even the One Piece itself? Think about it. The world government built Mary Joie on top of something. They've been hiding that giant straw hat, guarding forbidden knowledge. What if beneath the throne there's a portal, or a monument, or a sealed city? And that treasure, it's the key. Maybe literally, maybe symbolically, maybe it's a piece of an ancient map, a code, or a device that unlocks the last story. Robin, Vegapunk, or even Luffy himself uses it. And suddenly everything changes. We see the truth, the fall of the ancient kingdom, the birth of the world government, Joy Boy's final message, the reason for everything. This wouldn't just end the war, it would change the world forever. No explosions, no weapons, just truth. And in a world built on lies, that might be the most dangerous treasure of all. 31. The world government unleashes a new race of genetically perfect soldiers. Alright, this is classic villain playbook, but One Piece style, which means insane. So picture this. The world government is cornered. The war is slipping from their hands. Imu is losing ground. The Marines are exhausted. What's their final trump card? They unveil a new army, not just clones or seraphim. We're talking a genetically engineered race, built in secret using Lunarian DNA, maybe bits of Kaido, maybe even some of Luffy's gear power harvested from Vegapunk's old data. These aren't humans, they're lab-born monsters with no feelings, no free will, and no limits. They don't eat, they don't sleep, they don't even think, they just obey. And they're everywhere. Imagine these perfect soldiers flooding the battlefield. Even the Seraphim back off. Zoro slashes one and it doesn't fall. Sanji kicks one into the sky and it flies back with a jet boost. Robin tries to trap one and its body adapts instantly. It's like fighting gods made in test tubes. Now here's the kicker. Maybe they're meant to be the next evolution of humanity. A replacement. The government's twisted version of peace. No pirates, no rebellions, just perfect control. Luffy sees this and goes full rage. That's not freedom, that's slavery. Cue the Straw Hats unleashing everything. This would raise the scale of the war, and it fits perfectly with the theme of individuality versus control. The Straw Hats represent chaos, dreams, imperfection. These new soldiers, cold perfection. It's the ultimate clash, and when the world sees Luffy beating them while laughing, while being himself, the message hits. Perfection isn't worth it without freedom, 32nd. A Straw Hat betrays the crew during the final war. This one is pure emotional trauma. We've spent 25 plus years believing in the unbreakable bond of the Straw Hats. But what if at the worst possible moment, one of them breaks? A betrayal in the final war would shake the fandom hard. Not because it's edgy, but because it would feel impossible. Now let's be clear, this wouldn't be a true betrayal out of evil. It'd be complicated. Maybe it's a forced deal, maybe it's memory manipulation, maybe it's someone pretending to betray to infiltrate the enemy ranks. But still, the damage would be done. Imagine Zoro turning his sword against Luffy for 1 second, or Frankie hacking the Sunny under Gorosei orders, or even Usopp cracked under fear and pressure, doing something desperate. The moment would crush us, the crew would freeze, Luffy would hesitate, the music would cut, the world would stop. But then, redemption. That Straw Hat fights their way back. They reject the control. They scream through the pain. I never stopped believing in us. And when they return to the crew, broken but loyal, the hug hits hard. This would be Oda testing the bond of the crew in the harshest way. Not to destroy it, but to show it's stronger than anything. And if it's not a real Straw Hat, but a clone or imposter, even more chaos. Either way, Betrayal Arc equals emotional roller coaster. 33rd, Imu reveals they had the Operation of Eternal Youth okay. Time to go full immortal puppet master mode. We know Law's Ope no Mi has a mythical power, the perpetual youth operation. Sacrifice your life and grant someone eternal life. Now what if someone already did it and that someone was Imu? Boom. Suddenly everything clicks. Imu has ruled from the shadows for centuries. They've shaped the world in their image, and no one knows why they're still alive. Until the truth comes out, Imu used someone, maybe a powerful doctor, maybe an early user of the Ope, and became immortal. It explains the Gorosei's reverence. It explains why they hide the empty throne, and it means Imu was there during the Void Century. Imagine the moment they say it. I watched Joy Boy fall. I erased his kingdom myself. Chills. Now it's not just about freedom, it's about breaking a god, because how do you defeat someone who can't die? Cue Luffy going Ultra Gear 5, laughing even as the world collapses. You may live forever, but you're all alone. Imu's immortality becomes their curse, stuck in an endless loop of fear and control. And Luffy, the one force that refuses to bow. It's not about living forever, it's about living freely. 34. Roger's crew reunites in the final war. Now this would be legendary fan service, and so earned. Imagine the final war breaks out, the world is burning, the new generation is clashing against the government, and suddenly, you hear that iconic whistle. Rayleigh steps into battle, then Crocus, Shaki, Scopper Gabbin, the remnants of the Pirate King's crew, old, grizzled, and ready for one last storm. They don't fight to be heroes, they don't want the spotlight. They're here to protect the will of Roger, to see Joy Boy's dream fulfilled, to stand by Luffy in the final battle. Maybe they fight side by side with the Straw Hats, maybe they take on some Gorosei, or maybe they stand guard so Robin can finish reading the poneglyphs. And let's not forget, they know secrets about Laugh Tale, about the world, about Joy Boy. Their arrival could shift the entire war. Even a flashback from Buggy, pure gold. This moment wouldn't just hype fans, it'd complete a legacy. Roger couldn't finish the journey, but his crew can help the next one do it. One Piece is about inherited will, and this would be the most epic handoff ever. 35. The final war is broadcasted to the entire world. This one gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. Imagine the final war starts, and somewhere, maybe by Vegapunk's design, maybe Sabo's doing, every Denden Mushi in the world turns on, screens light up, snail phones buzz, and suddenly everyone sees it. The war, the truth, the fall of the Celestial Dragons, Luffy laughing in the face of a god, Robin reading the ancient message aloud, people in the East Blue crying, kings frozen, kids shouting, "That's my captain!" Villains stunned, the world watching history unfold in real time. It turns the final war into a global revolution. No more hiding, no more secrets. This isn't a secret rebellion, it's a damn spectacle. And when the people see Luffy win, it's not just his victory, it's theirs. This theory is the perfect climax. Transparency, legacy, unity. And Oda? Oh, he'd milk the drama like crazy. 36. Zoro opens his eye. Okay, we've been waiting years for this. Zoro's eye has been closed since the time skip. No explanation, no reveal, just mystery. And what if Oda's been saving it for this exact moment? The final war? Imagine Zoro, battered and bloodied, facing off against one of the top tier enemies. Maybe a Gorosei, maybe Mihawk, maybe a genetically enhanced marine samurai who's pushing him past his limits. His swords are chipped, his haki is burning, he's on the brink, and then he opens the eye. Boom, instant hype. And what's inside? There are tons of theories. Some say it's a scar, others say it's the Sharingan of the One Piece world. But let's go all in. Maybe it's a forbidden technique, a form of observation. Haki so intense it's dangerous. Maybe Mihawk taught him to keep it closed unless absolutely necessary. Or maybe it's connected to the Asura form, a literal demon eye, letting Zoro push into a berserker state where he transcends normal limits. Opening that eye could signal the moment Zoro fully becomes the world's strongest swordsman, no doubt, no debate. And it would be perfectly timed, right at the climax when everything's on the line. Fans would lose it, TikTok would melt, YouTube would explode, and Zoro, he wouldn't even say anything. He'd just open it and cut through fate itself. 37. Enel comes back and plays a major role in the final war. You thought he was gone. Nah, Enel's coming back with thunder and god complex energy. Last we saw him, he was chilling on the moon with robot space beings and a massive army of automata. And let's be honest, Oda did not spend all that time drawing moon lore and Skytech just for fun. Enel's return is inevitable. Now picture this. The final war is raging. The seas are in chaos, and suddenly the skies darken. Storm clouds gather, thunder echoes across the world, and then boom! Enel descends from the heavens like Zeus on crack. The world freaks out, Marines panic, pirates don't know if he's friend or foe, he's not part of any alliance, he's just here because the earth is finally worthy of his attention. But here's the cool twist, Enel might side with Luffy. Why? Not out of friendship, but because he hates the world government even more. They called themselves gods? Pathetic. He's a rogue force of nature, attacking CP0 ships, frying clones, zapping zapping satellites, or maybe he sides with no one and just causes pure chaos. His power is still top tier. Logia, ultra-fast movement, voice of all things, confirmed, and sky-based surveillance. He could be the wild card no one expected, the one factor even Emu didn't prepare for. His comeback would be electric, pun intended. 38, Blackbeard steals Emu's fruit. Alright, this one? Terrifying. We know Teach is the ultimate thief. He stole Whitebeard's fruit. He may have stolen a second devil fruit using some unknown method. And if Emu is the final villain and has some god tier fruit, then yeah, you know Blackbeard is thinking about how to take it. Now imagine this. Emu is at their peak. Maybe they're using a time-based fruit or an immortality power. The final war is reaching its climax, and just when it looks like Luffy and the others are losing, Blackbeard strikes. He sneaks in like the cockroach he is, using his darkness powers to cancel Emu's abilities. Then boom, he steals their fruit. Suddenly, Teach becomes the real final boss, powered by darkness and whatever reality bending ability Emu had. He didn't just inherit the will of D, he stole the future. Now it's Luffy versus Blackbeard one last time. Joy Boy versus the Parasite who leached off everyone's legacy, and the world barely hanging on. This would be one of the darkest twists in the story, but also one of the most fitting, because Blackbeard has always been the shadow to Luffy's light, and this would be his ultimate theft, but also his downfall. 39, the Sunny turns out to be an ancient weapon. This theory is straight up beautifully poetic. What if the Thousand Sunny, the ship that's carried the Straw Hats across every sea, is actually more than just Franky's dream machine? What if it's Pluton? Think about it. Franky had the blueprints, he burned them, yes, but maybe he memorized them. Maybe he secretly built Pluton, not knowing it was Pluton. He just wanted to build the ultimate ship, and in doing so, he fulfilled his destiny. Now imagine in the final war, the tides are turning, the Alliance is losing, and Franky hits a final switch. The Sunny transforms. Cannons emerge. The hull shifts. The ship awakens. Sea Kings react. The ocean trembles. Everyone stares in disbelief. Luffy, Franky, what the hell is this? Franky, the ship that'll carry the Pirate King and end the old world. Boom. It's not just fan service, it's earned. It turns the Straw Hats home into their final weapon, their moving legacy, and it gives Franky the spotlight he deserves. The ship that brought freedom becomes freedom's final bullet. 40, Zunisha dies. This one's gonna hurt. Zunisha, the ancient elephant that's been walking for centuries, punished for a crime we still don't fully understand. He's one of the most majestic, emotional presences in One Piece. And what if he dies in the final war? Maybe he sacrifices himself to destroy the Red Line. Maybe he's targeted by Uranus or the Lulusia weapon. Maybe Imu sees him as a symbol of the ancient kingdom and erases him. Whatever the reason, the moment Zunisha falls would shake the seas. Momonosuke would cry, the world would mourn, the Sea Kings would scream. But here's the beauty, Zunisha's death would have meaning. He walked for centuries awaiting Joy Boy's return. And in the final hour, when that destiny is fulfilled, he gives his life to help Luffy change the world. His final roar echoes across the Grand Line, a sound that breaks mountains, that opens the path, and then silence. It's tragic, but it's the kind of ending a true ancient guardian deserves. 40. Zunisha dies. This one's gonna hurt. Zunisha, the ancient elephant that's been walking for centuries, punished for a crime we still don't fully understand. He's one of the most majestic, emotional presences in One Piece. And what if he dies in the final war? Maybe he sacrifices himself to destroy the Red Line. Maybe he's targeted by Uranus or the Lulusia weapon. Maybe Imu sees him as a symbol of the ancient kingdom and erases him. Whatever the reason, the moment Zunisha falls would shake the seas. Momonosuke would cry. The world would mourn. The Sea Kings would scream. But here's the beauty. Zunisha's death would have meaning. He walked for centuries awaiting Joy Boy's return. And in the final hour, when that destiny is fulfilled, he gives his life to help Luffy change the world. His final roar echoes across the Grand Line, a sound that breaks mountains, that opens the path, and then silence. It's tragic, but it's the kind of ending a true ancient guardian deserves. 41. The Ark will have a countdown. The islands are sinking due to an ancient weapon. Now this is pure cinematic tension. Imagine the final arc isn't just about war, it's a race against time. Why? Because an ancient weapon, maybe Uranus or a corrupted Pluton, has been activated and it's destabilizing the planet itself. Tectonic shifts, ocean levels rising, islands crumbling into the sea, and suddenly a massive countdown begins. Not just for dramatic effect, but because the world is literally sinking. Reverse Mountain starts cracking, the red line begins to shake, islands across the blues vanish, entire countries evacuate, Fishman Island starts surfacing, maybe as a result of the collapse. The world map begins to change in real time, and the war rages on while this is happening. This changes everything. There's no more time for strategy, it's chaos. People start asking, what's more important, fighting or surviving? The Straw Hats have to split up. Some protect civilians, others chase after the enemy. The Revolutionary Army scrambles to save as much history and life as possible. Vegapunk tries to stop the chain reaction, and in the middle of it all, Luffy still shouts, "We're gonna finish this first." This setup adds constant urgency. Every fight is under pressure, every victory comes with a cost, and when the final blow is struck, maybe it's too late. But that's where the Straw Hats shine. They don't stop because the world's ending. They stop the end itself. Apocalyptic, epic, full of heartbreak and hope. 42nd, Garling Figureland dies. Ah, St. Garling Figureland, that smug, mysterious celestial knight who looks like a darker version of Shanks. We all know Oda didn't drop his name and design for no reason. He's meant to go out with a bang. Now imagine this. Garling is sent in by Imu as the last line of elite force. Maybe he leads a squad of divine knights. Maybe he's fighting Shanks. Maybe he's the world government's chosen warrior, the face of their dying ideology, and he's terrifying, fast, ruthless. Maybe he even has the same conqueror's haki Shanks has, or something even darker. But then he falls, maybe to Shanks, maybe to Dragon, maybe even to Zoro if Oda wants to give him a truly noble kill. But the point is, Garling dies, and with him goes the illusion of the celestial superiority, because this man wasn't just a warrior, he was a symbol of divine blood, of tyranny wrapped in glory. His fall shows the world that even gods bleed. His death would be shocking, bloody, raw, but necessary. And if he is connected to Shanks by blood, that just adds 10 layers of emotional trauma to the moment. Another false god cut down in the name of freedom. 43rd, Akainu dies. Oh, this one is going to split the fandom in half, but it's gotta happen. Akainu is the embodiment of absolute justice, the man who murdered Ace, the man who never bent, never hesitated, never doubted. But in the final war, that mentality is going to break. He's been the face of marine tyranny for years, and whether you hate him or admire his intensity, his end needs to be monumental. Maybe he dies fighting Dragon, or maybe he clashes with Luffy in a one-on-one rematch where Luffy finally settles Ace's grudge. Or even crazier, Kobe defeats him. Now that would be poetic, but here's the most interesting path. Maybe Akainu dies a tragic death, not as a villain, but as a man too rigid to change. Maybe he realizes in his final moments that absolute justice led to nothing but more war. Imagine the last scene, Akainu bleeding, the navy in flames behind him. He looks at the sea and mutters, "Maybe Aokiji was right." It wouldn't be redemption, but it would be clarity, the last gasp of a dying ideology. And when he's gone, the Marines face a choice: keep following ghosts or build something new. 44. The truth about the Gorosei and Holy Knight's powers and immortality is revealed. This is the one we've all been waiting for. The Gorosei aren't just old men in robes, they're monsters. We've seen their transformed devilish forms. We've seen their fearsome aura. But what's the truth behind their powers? Why don't they age? How are they so connected to Imu? Well, here's the theory. They're not just powerful, they're immortal. Maybe through the Ope Ope fruit, maybe through a ritual. Maybe they're eldritch beings bound to the throne itself. And the Holy Knights? Maybe they're not even human anymore. Imagine the reveal. Vegapunk leaks the truth live during the war. Robin deciphers it from a lost pony glyph. The world learns that the ones who ruled them were never like them at all. Immortality, body swapping, ancient curses. These guys didn't just manipulate history, they survived it. And suddenly, the war changes. You're not fighting men, you're fighting living lies. And the solution: break the curse, destroy the source. Maybe it's the empty empty throne, maybe it's Imu, maybe it's a seal under Marie Joie. Either way, when the truth comes out, the people rebel with fire in their hearts, because no one wants to be ruled by monsters pretending to be gods. 45th, Usopp becomes a god among the people, like an ultra god Usopp. And now for one of the most deserved theories of all. Usopp, our boy, the liar, the dreamer, the coward turned warrior. What if during the final war he pulls off something so massive that the people of the world genuinely start calling him a god? Maybe he saves an entire island from sinking. Maybe he blows up a Gorosei with one perfect sniper shot. Maybe he leads a revolution on the ground while the giants of Elbaf chant his name. And then it spreads. The kids in East Blue hear it. Civilians across the Grand Line scream, "God Usopp!" The people believe in him, not because he's the strongest, but because he never gave up. This wouldn't just be a gag anymore. It'd be canon legend. Usopp would cry, deny it, try to run from it, but deep down, he knows he earned it. He's not a liar anymore. He's a symbol, and when the war ends, he walks away, not just as a Straw Hat, but as a myth. 46. Vegapunk creates a machine that temporarily disables all devil fruits. Now this would be the ultimate equalizer. We know Vegapunk is a scientific genius who's been playing with devil fruit replication, memory tech, and even satellites. So what if in the final war he activates one last invention? A machine that nullifies every devil fruit on the battlefield, at least temporarily. Boom. No gears, no Logias, no awakenings, just raw skill. Imagine the chaos. Luffy falls from the sky mid-Gear 5. Kizaru loses his light powers. Law can't use Rune. Even teaches Yami Yami Nomi vanishes. And now it's just straight up hand-to-hand combat, hockey, strategy, and sheer willpower. Why would Vegapunk do this? Maybe as a way to stop the total destruction. Maybe to prevent the ancient weapons from activating. Or maybe he knows that only by resetting the board can the Straw Hats win fairly against beings like the Gorosei or Imu. This would turn the war on its head. Characters who relied on fruits their whole lives would be exposed. Others, like Zoro, Sanji, and Shanks-style fighters would rise. It levels the battlefield. It forces people to fight as they are. And it gives the final war a raw, grounded energy that One Piece hasn't had since pre-Grand Line. Oh, and imagine the moment the powers return. Gear 5, Awakening, all at once, Madness, 47. The world government releases a disease, and Chopper finds the cure. This one's personal, and perfectly Oda style. Imagine the world government, desperate and losing, goes full bio-warfare. They release a global disease. Something ancient, maybe engineered, maybe found in a sealed chamber under Marie Joie. Either way, it spreads fast. Through Denden Mushi, air, even water. People collapse. Fighters lose their strength. Civilians die. It's terrifying. And in the middle of it all, Chopper steps forward. The smallest Straw Hat, the softest, but also the Doctor of Dreams. The one who promised to cure any disease. He isolates it. He studies it. He cries while people suffer, but he doesn't stop. And finally, with Robin's help and Vegapunk's backup, he creates the cure, distributes it, saves lives, turns the tide. He doesn't punch a villain. He doesn't destroy a weapon, but he saves the world. And in the end, people don't call him a pet or a reindeer or a monster. They call him Dr. Chopper with full respect. 48. Robin reveals the truth to the world in a global broadcast. Now this one's gonna hit deep. Robin has been carrying the burden of history since she was a child. She's been hunted, tortured, chased, just because she can read the poneglyphs. And in the final war, she finally gets her moment. Imagine her standing before a Denden Mushi camera, injured, exhausted, and behind her the truth, the story of the Void Century, of Joy Boy, of the Ancient Kingdom, of the lies the world government built its power on. And she speaks, calm, steady, tears in her eyes. As the world listens, former enemies freeze, civilians stop running, the Marines question their orders, the Celestial Dragons start to panic, and Luffy, he watches her with pride, because this is her fight, her voice. This wouldn't be a flashy battle scene, it would be the emotional climax, the moment the truth wins, and Robin, the girl who once said she had no place in the world, becomes the voice that changes it. Goosebumps. 49th, Buggy plays a key role in the final war, by pure luck, and now, the final theory. And it's hilarious, and somehow, totally believable. Buggy D. Clown. He stumbles into the final war, screaming, running, accidentally commanding fleets, somehow avoiding death again and again. He trips, dodges an admiral's attack, he sneezes, blows up a CP-0 ship, he shouts, "I surrender!" and the Marines retreat. And through all this, people start believing in him. Buggy the Wise, Buggy the Unkillable, Buggy the King, and maybe, just maybe, he does something that actually matters. Maybe he saves Luffy at the last second, maybe he gives the final blow to a weakened Emu by complete accident, or maybe he just survives it all and becomes the face of the new pirate era. Buggy, the clown god of chaos. And you know what? We'd love it, because in the end, One Piece is about dreams, madness, and heart, and no one fumbles through those better than Buggy. And finally, number 50. This last theory is up to you. Leave it for me in the comments. Tell me, what theory do you have about the final war that hasn't been mentioned in this video? I'll be reading all of them and seeing which one is the best or the most original. And that's it for the 50 theories about the final war in One Piece. Which one was your favorite, or which one do you think is definitely going to happen? Let me know in the comments. And remember, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to help me reach 5,000 subscribers and make my dream come true. Big hug, and I'll see you in the next video.